The Supreme Court has issued a single-page ruling expediting the ruling on the VRA. Now, normally, there's a 32-day wait period. Now, interestingly, this came down just last night. We briefly talked about it last night, but the story is actually fairly insane. Alito has accused Ketanji Brown Jackson, the Supreme Court justice, accusing a Supreme Court justice of insulting the court with her request that an unconstitutional election be allowed to continue despite the ruling from the court. Now, it's a bit complicated to break down exactly what the arguments are. Suffice it to say, the conservative justices are actively fighting for a cause. That is the only interpretation I can see. Liberals are actively fighting as well. And I'm just looking at this battle for the midterm elections, procedural victories, congressional seats based upon rulings from courts as opposed to what people actually want. And my only conclusion is this country is about to just break out into a brawl. I mean, when you've got the Supreme Court, which is supposed to be like the most academic of arguments, accusing another justice of insulting the court with their argument. Not to mention, they've also insulted Ketanji Brown Jackson politely and academically before. It looks like we're reaching that boiling point. When the Supreme Court gets to the point where they're fighting and it's getting to that level, I can't imagine what everyone else is going to do. Because we go to the Supreme Court to resolve the issues when, siblings are fighting in the streets. This ruling's absolutely insane, not for the merit of the ruling, but how it's being laid down with the differences between the liberals and the conservatives. We're going to break all of that down. Of course, tonight, we also have the Ohio primary, which basically is over. Vivek Ramaswamy won. However, in the prediction markets, he is now expected to lose the Ohio primary. Yikes. And we've got a couple other stories. One big one, of course, is that Trump has suggested they're going to release, said they're going to release a bunch of UFO information. And a pastor online has claimed that the government has brought a bunch of different pastors together to warn them they will need to prepare their congregations for full alien disclosure. Now, I'd normally just poo-poo that stuff, but considering how much the government has been preparing for this, what with alien.gov and these conversations, I actually am not surprised to hear these conversations may be happening. And in fact, others have corroborated the claim that government officials are going to pastors and saying, listen, you got to prepare your congregation for what we're about to release. It's going to get crazy. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more, my friends. Before we do, we got a great sponsor for you. It is Pocket Hose. Let's go. The world's #1 expanding hose has gone ballistic. Pocket Hose is the #1 expandable hose in the world. Super lightweight, easy to manage, easy to store. Turn the water on and it grows. Turn the water off and it shrinks back to pocket size. The Pocket Hose Ballistic is reinforced with a liquid crystal polymer used in bulletproof vests, making the anti-burst sleeve practically bulletproof. And that liquid crystal polymer fiber is actually 5 times stronger than steel. Comes with a pocket pivot, which gives you total freedom of movement at the spigot. With 360-degree rotation, you move, it follows, and the water flows. Enhanced with an upgraded UV coating, so the hose looks new year after year. Re-engineered, thicker washers that resist leaks. Pocket Hose carries over 100 patents worldwide. And now for a limited time, when you purchase a new Pocket Hose Ballistic, you'll get a free 360-degree rotating pocket pivot and a free thumb drive nozzle. Just text TIM to 64,000. That's TIM to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. Text TIM to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. Shout out. Thanks for sponsoring the show, guys. Don't forget to go to timcast.com, click join us, get in that Discord community. The uncensored portion of the show is on Rumble Premium every night at 10 p.m. But as a Discord member, you can call in and actually talk to us and our guests. And I recommend it. We got tens of thousands of people hanging out. If you want to meet new people, get involved, be active in the political space, this is one way to do it while actively supporting the show and the work that we do. Don't forget to also smash that like button, share the show with everyone you know. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more is Noel Fritsch.
Thanks for having me, Tim. Appreciate it.
Who are you? What do you do?
I am a conservative campaign consultant, and I also publish the National File. We've done some stories of note going back several years, most notably probably the Ashley Biden diary. And also, we're responsible for defanging Cal Cunningham and saving the 50-50 Senate in 2020. Charlie Kirk gave us credit for that. We were very proud to have his shout out back then. So, yeah, right now we're running against Lindsey Graham with my client Mark Lynch down in South Carolina.
We're not big fans of Lindsey Graham.
Nor are we.
I don't know who is.
We can't find any fans in South Carolina.
That's amazing.
A couple of government bureaucrats are sort of on the dole from Lindsey, but that's about it.
Maybe a lot of illegal immigrants and, but we'll talk about that. So it'll be fun having you. We got the boys hanging out.
What's up, baby?
What's going on? I think the gay district in D.C. might be a big fan of Lindsey Graham. I believe he frequents
DuPont Circle.
I was going to say
DuPont Circle is very popular there.
Yeah. So I would assume.
Now hold on.
Lindsey Graham
I don't know if you guys are joking.
Mm-hmm. No.
I genuinely don't know if you're
I
joking.
wouldn't know.
Some truth there.
Is it a correlation or an insinuation?
The insinuation is that he's a 7-year-old bachelor.
Childless warmonger.
He was just a
I mean, like, I got like, if you're, at least older than 45 and you're a single guy.
Something's going on.
Keep going, Tim.
He wasn't he in the Air Force, I think?
Bring the noise.
Bring the noise. All right, so Ian's here. Carter's pressed the button. Tate's
47
hanging
and
out.
I'm single. That's why he's saying that.
Let's.
It either means you're gay or like a intellectual genius.
Gay or a genius, yeah.
Yeah. Are you both?
But if you're a billionaire,
I speak out of turn.
if you're a billionaire and single, then everyone kind of understands
yeah,
that
that's just ball knowledge.
you may actually have 30 secret baby mamas and with weird names.
Yeah,
you make them sign contracts.
Sperm to
Bro, if you fired your sperm out into the universe, would it be like panspermia? Like it would land on another planet?
Yeah, you would
That's
get
what
some
they think.
weird
Do a time capsule as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like
how about
the
we talk
birthing
about
of
the
universe
world,
through fungal
not whatever
sources,
world
yeah.
you live in?
Take it to me, Tim.
Here's a story from the New York Times. Supreme Court agrees to fast-track Louisiana voting map decision. Now, this in and of itself is not the big news because we did talk about this a little bit last night when the news came in, just around like 7 or so yesterday. The Supreme Court said, we're not going to wait 32 days to transmit this to the lower courts. We're going to do it right now. Here's the gist of it. When the Supreme Court issues a ruling, they wait a month so that people can get their fair and orders. Maybe there will be arguments made to counter or whatever, and they'll sometimes hear them. So they give you 32 days to do all of that. This time around, Alito and the conservatives said, nope, we are fast-tracking this ruling to the lower courts to put it in place now so that Louisiana can redistrict, shut down the primary, and start again. Now, there's some problems here. There's already, I think, around 50,000 absentee ballots cast in the Louisiana primary. And they're basically saying, nah, doesn't count anymore. So when Alito argues, we're just going to do this, it's going to happen, there is an argument there. The problem is, there is an argument there. You are going to end up creating a legal complaint from tens of thousands of people. So what ends up happening is Ketanji Brown Jackson, probably, in my opinion, with the worst argument. Look, far be it from me to question a Supreme Court justice. That being said, her arguments are, it looks biased to do, and people may want to make arguments. And it's just like the weakest argument she could have made as to why they should not do this. So the gist of it is this. Louisiana wants to redistrict. A bunch of red states want to redistrict. They want to get rid of racially gerrymandered districts. This will give the Republicans upwards of 12 seats and take 12 seats from Democrats. Republicans will win the midterms on procedure, not popularity. This is crazy. In order to do this, they needed precedent from the Supreme Court to say racially gerrymandered districts gotta go. The DOJ then came out and said, we are going to require every state who has racially gerrymandered districts to change those maps. Now, for those that don't know what that means, these are congressional districts that are drawn up specifically based on race. The Supreme Court said you can't. The DOJ said we're going to make sure you don't. And now red states are saying, okay, we'll change the maps. For that to happen, the Supreme Court has to issue their ruling, which we know they did publicly, but they usually wait 32 days. In this instance, they've decided not to. Let me read you. It's only a couple of paragraphs from the Supreme Court. To permit the losing party time to file a petition for rehearing, the clerk of court ordinarily waits 32 days after the entry of the court's judgment to send the opinion and certified copy of the judgment to the clerk of the lower court. This period is subject to adjustment. The default applies unless the court or a justice shortens or extends the time. The Calais appellees have asked for the clerk to issue the judgment forthwith so that in the event of a judicial remedy, the district court may oversee an orderly process. Appellant Louisiana does not oppose this application, and while the Robinson appellants oppose it, they have not expressed any intent to ask this court to reconsider its judgment. Thus, the application to issue the judgment forthwith presented by Justice Alito and by him referred to the court, is granted. Justice Alito, with Justice Thomas and Justice Gorsuch concurring. Now, they go on to mention right away the dissent in this suit, for which, oh boy, homeboy is pissed. The dissent, which I'll show you a bit of first, is this from Justice Jackson, saying the court's decision in these cases has spawned chaos in the state of Louisiana. Louisiana's primary elections were scheduled to take place on May 16th. Accordingly, the state mailed ballots overseas and military voters, to overseas and military voters on April 1st, and to other voters who qualified to vote by mail on April 26th. By April 29th, the date on which the court released its decision holding that Louisiana's current congressional map is unconstitutional and unconstitutional gerrymander, some Louisiana voters had already mailed back their filled-in ballots. The very next day, Louisiana's governor declared that Calais effectively revives the lower court's prior injunction against the current map. Now, what she's arguing is that they should follow Rule 45.3. I know it's all very esoteric and muddy, but she's saying give them 32 days, which means you can't redo the map. In response, which is interesting because the response to the dissent is before the dissent. This is what he says. Alito says, the dissent in this suit levels charges that cannot go unanswered. The dissent would require the 2026 congressional elections in Louisiana be held under a map that has been held to be unconstitutional. The dissent does not claim that it is now too late for the state legislature or the district court to adopt a new map that complies with the Constitution, nor does the dissent assert that it is not feasible for the elections to be held under such a map. Instead, the dissent offers two reasons. The first is compliance with the 32-day default rule. Again, I said her argument was really dumb. The principal reason for the 32-day default is to give a losing party time to prepare, et cetera, et cetera. He says, the congressional districting map enacted by the legislature has been held to be unconstitutional, and the general election will be held in just 6 months. He was going to say, what principle has the court violated? The principal rule of 45.3's 32-day default period should never be shortened, even when there's good reason to do so. The principle that we should never take action that might unjustifiably be criticized as partisan. The dissent accuses the court of unshackling itself from constraints. It is the dissent's rhetoric that lacks restraint. And that right there is a how dare you, ma'am. But indeed, he calls it insulting. Let me pull up the specific. He says, nor does the dissent assert that it is not feasible for the elections to be held on such a map. Instead, the dissent offers two reasons. One is trivial at best, and the other is baseless and insulting. Here's your takeaway, everybody. The Daily Beast says SCOTUS justice melts down at colleagues' insulting criticism. And get this, democracy docket dropping today, one day after, let the chaos begin. Supreme Court erred in fast-tracking Calais judgment and should stop Louisiana redraw, black voters argue. Of course, Democracy Docket is a Democrat-aligned group that doesn't want the redistricting. However, this is what they're reporting. The black voters who successfully sued Louisiana to redraw its congressional map to add another majority-minority district in 23, only to have that redraw struck down by the Supreme Court in last week's Louisiana v. Calais, are now asking the court to recall its quick order Monday, clearing the way for a rushed redistricting during a paused primary. So, to wrap this all up in a neat little bow, considering it's a long-winded story, the justices are faced with a legitimate argument. Typically, what we have seen, like if you go back to 2020, the Supreme Court refused to take the case Texas v. Pennsylvania, where Texas argued 4 states unconstitutionally altered the rules of their elections so that Biden would win. An argument that I think is legitimate and at least should have been ruled upon. But the Supreme Court, being a bunch of cowards, refused to do it. It was only Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito who said, we must hear this case because it was filed state against state and they have original jurisdiction in the matter. They handle these cases. They refused to do it. So when I saw that they were willing to stop an election dead in its tracks, cancel 50,000 votes, and then tell Justice Jackson she is insulting them for arguing they shouldn't, only thing I'd say was, it's on. The conservative justices are playing the game now alongside everyone else, which is good news and bad news. The good news is, thank God, they're actually fighting right now. They are deciding to say, we're done with the games. this map's unconstitutional. Normally what we saw from courts was, well, we can't issue the ruling, but we're going to leave this election as it is because it's already started, and the next one will change. The fact that they're not doing that is massive. Now, here's the bad news. The Supreme Court is fighting. When you have the president arguing with Congress and Congress passing bills to restrain them, the court is usually the people sitting in their robes, all looking at each other going, well, I dare say, I would argue the president is correct. And then the liberal just goes, well, I think that the other side is incorrect. And it looks all academic. The fact that we're at the point where he says you're irrational, you're insulting and trivial, this is not the first time that they've insulted Ketanji Brown Jackson. The bad news here is every institution we have is now in the fray. And maybe that's bad news. I think it's bad news because it shows instability, but I can at least say, look, the fight was already here. And I'm not saying physical fight. I'm saying the political lawfare is here. And I am glad the conservative justices are saying we are going to take action. Boys, what say you?
Well, I think you're right that the confrontation was already inevitable and already happening at different layers, and the Supreme Court had been tepid to get involved. But at some point, the court is there to argue and to argue each other and to argue counterpoints to each other. Whether or not it's personal, ideally not, but sometimes a slip here and there. Really, it shouldn't get personal. It should be about the rules and the regulations. But if one justice is regularly doing something that the rest of the justices find abhorrent, I think they're within their bounds to say something. And a natural force. I before the show went live, I thought they should start a reality show. Like, we should put cameras on them and they can debate so the whole world can hear them debating these ideas.
Slap each other with gloves.
We don't have to read these 8-page legalist things and try and decipher what words mean. Because what percentage of the population you think can handle Ketanji Brown Jackson's argument right now and could understand it? 0.0001%.
To be honest, guys, it took me 9 minutes to try and work through all of that, and I am trying to simplify it as much as possible.
Can I boil it down? Functionally, you have the Democrats on the court arguing for Jim Crow discrimination. That is what is going on here.
Agreed.
That's what's happening.
I think Jackson's two main points were, one, the election's already ongoing, but the other one is that, hey, these people in the state that have cast their votes have an actual redress to their own Supreme Court, and for the U.S. Supreme Court to say no is like stepping over the bounds. You really shouldn't get involved with our state is what I think.
Well, listen. The thing that I got to say, I don't agree with Ketanji Brown Jackson's idiotic argument. We should just uphold a flat standard on Rule 45.3. What? The court can decide not to do that. However, there was an argument that there's 50,000 people who already cast their ballots. They've been given mail-in ballots. I'm not a fan of that. They've filled them out and mailed them in. They're now going to be told that's void. They're going to get standing in a suit. They may not win, but you are creating, let's just put it this way. Let's talk about the can of worms. A congressional district was created and a vote began. This means there's a congressional campaign that has raised millions of dollars. That means there are donors who have donated this campaign. Now the court has ruled it's an unconstitutional map. It's got to be redrawn. Those candidates, all that money, all that campaign work, for nothing.
Well, on the other side of the ledger are the millions of people literally who are disenfranchised because of all of this.
Agreed. The point is nothing malicious happened. There was no intention of the government to do something unconstitutional that one could argue, and the Supreme Court arguing y'all made a mistake and it's unconstitutional is not a malicious action. So there will not be a remedy that could be granted to anybody who donated to that congressional campaign that no longer can exist. This is legitimate chaos.
Yeah, well, there's multiple problems here. I mean, the first one is, I think part of the reason the Supreme Court, we're getting such favorable decisions out of them right now is because Brown Jackson is like genuinely a moron. And I think that that's like a real thing. I think a lot of these justices sitting on the Supreme Court right now, you've even seen in a few cases, you've even seen Kagan break away, where Kagan has like listened to Brown Jackson and told her off in her dissent or whatever in her opinion. And so I think what's happening here, I do agree that, yeah, the Supreme Court justices are kind of wising up to what's going on here, that we're actually in a knife fight right now. But I also think that Brown Jackson is just so bad at her job that it's actually a liability for the liberals right now as we speak. In addition to that, I mean, well, Ian, to your point, I mean, I don't know if it'd be a good idea to put cameras in the Supreme Court. I think it's part of the problem with Congress right now is actually that there's cameras, and
I agree.
These different committee hearings and everything.
Cult of personality.
They start appealing to the cameras and that sort of thing. That would be kicked. I mean, do you think Brown Jackson? She was in a musical. So, she would love to have cameras in the Supreme Court. That would be her dream. So I think there's a problem there. In addition to this, look, this was what a lot of Democrats were citing when the initial ballot language came out for the Virginia redistricting. Is they said they had problems with it. I vividly remember seeing various Democrat politicos saying this might blow up in our face because of the specific wording that they use on the Virginia redistricting ballot measure. Was they said, oh well, this is rebalance and restore fairness to our elections and everything. If they would have just flat out said we're redistricting, yes or no, they actually probably would have been fine, because if you look at the judge where he issued the injunction in southwestern Virginia, his main contention was actually that the ballot language was unclear, which it was. I think a lot of uninformed voters probably went to the ballots in Virginia and they said, fairness, that seems like they know what they're doing. I'll vote yes for that.
But it's worth noting that it's a big sea change decision in behavior here with the DOJ. I mean, literally for now 65 years or whatever since the VRA in the mid 60s, you're looking at the DOJ literally enforcing these racist districts, okay? And now this is a big watershed moment where it's literally a 180 flip, inverted.
This is a really great example of, how would you describe this? Laws don't exist.
Revolution.
Laws don't exist. The Constitution doesn't exist. What people need to understand is all that matters is the moral majority's willingness to use the power at their disposal.
Yep.
To put it simply, when the 1964 Civil Rights Act was enacted, a year later, they enacted the Voting Rights Act. The Voting Rights Act, Section 2, says you cannot discriminate in voting on the basis of race. Under that argument, they successfully argued to the courts there should be black majority congressional districts. Otherwise, you're discriminating. Now, the view back then was the political worldview of a group of people is predominantly tied to their race and then subsequently other issues of their lives. Thus, it is discrimination if black people don't have the opportunity only among themselves to choose who their candidate is. Under the exact same law, this Supreme Court said quite the opposite. In fact, it is racial discrimination to create a racial district, a congressional district based on race.
Right.
How could the same law result in complete opposite court rulings over a period of time? All that mattered was who was willing to bang the gavel.
Yeah, that's the justice's main job is to interpret the law, and that's what they're doing. It's the same law.
So now we have two countries existing in one nation, a multicultural democracy, that's the Democrats, and a constitutional republic, that's the right and the Republicans. And their argument is the activist court of the right has just overturned civil rights protections that have been in place for generations. And on the right, the argument is they finally stopped allowing racial discrimination, which I agree. They finally stopped forcing racial discrimination.
I would draw a corollary almost here between Plessy versus Ferguson and then Brown v. Board. It was 1896 to 1954. Okay. And so that took about 50, 60 years. And so we're actually kind of looking at the same timeline here, mid 60s to now. And
interestingly, the same argument that segregation was equality. It gave them their own space to be free to do what they wanted. And then the argument changed to no, making people use different spaces or go to different schools is not equality.
Interesting, because the tone of hatred went down from 1890 to 1950. It used to be, we don't want them here. We're safer and we're all better off if we're here and they're there. And then over time, people realized, actually, we can coexist and we're going to force it legally.
Well, and the FedGov had to come in and, basically nationalize the National Guard, federalize the National Guard in some of these southern states and enforce the desegregation. And so that's what we're looking at here. Essentially, we're in the FedGov coming in and enforcing the desegregation of these racially gerrymandered districts.
I feel like the irony can't be understated that the precedent from the Pennsylvania lawsuit back in, was it 2020? 2020, yeah, is the precedent that's set.
I'm livid. I'm livid. I warned of this in 2020 when the Supreme Court, when it was only Alito and Thomas who agreed to hear the case, Texas v. Pennsylvania. I said, if you do not answer this question, it is going to be bedlam in the next several years. And here we are now. We are not having an election, ladies and gentlemen. I understand. I'm happy to see the Republicans win over the Democrats. The Democrats are nuts. But I'm going to say it. I think it's plain as day to anybody who wants to be honest. We are not having a midterm election. We are having a legal battle over who will get power in Congress. That's it.
Yeah, I for a while I was concerned, thinking that the Trump administration was a coup or an attempted coup. People are saying that. His detractors are like, they're trying to take over the government. It's a coup, and it's like. Then I talked to somebody, and they're like, no, bro, it's a revolution. We are experiencing a revolution in the United States in slow motion.
That's true.
These departments have, like you said, 180-degree shifts. Robert F. Kennedy with the FDA, the amount of change that's happened dietarily, let alone another form of revolution.
USAID.
Yes. Ripping the money out of the politics. So people are listening to us. You know, that administration has ears on shows like this. So we have an opportunity to guide the revolution. And it's a loaded term. You know, a lot of cult of personality is bad in revolutions because they leave vacuums when the guy goes away. So you want to distance from Trump, make it about the rules and the systems.
I don't think of it that way, Ian. I'm not trying to tell people what they should or should not do or prescribe any action anybody should be taking. If they hear what I'm saying and it does influence, that's a byproduct. The only thing I'm happy to have influenced is that people didn't go and see Animal Farm. But aside from that, Congress is a different picture.
Well, let's tap onto the idea of revolution. The United States is a revolution. The United States is written system of the ability to revolve the people in it. They come in and they go out. There's that revolution. You can amend the laws and change them or repeal them, so you can revolve the laws that are on the books. It's the perfect system to have a peaceful revolution. And if we do it right, I mean, they're going to try and turn it into a technocracy. We got to be steadfast about it because the liberal economic order wants the global banking system to kind of spearhead with the American military. So and Trump's doing it. Grab the reins and guide the system.
Before you talk, can I just say Civil War? Go ahead.
Well, no, that's actually a great segue there, because I was going to make the point that I actually don't even know if we have the capacity for a peaceful revolution anymore, because the Civil War was actually kind of what called that bluff, like, so to speak. Is, again, that made it very obvious that there's a compact that once you enter the United States, your state can now no longer secede from the Union or a war will break out. I mean, obviously there was a lot of complications of why the war actually occurred, but one of the cruxes of it was, again, the southern states wanting to leave, saying they had a variety of policy and civilizational disagreements with the North. And so that actually, like, incapacitates the ability for a revolution to truly occur in the United States peacefully. It's going to get bloody no matter what. In addition to that, I mean, on the VRA story, one thing was interesting no one's talking about is in Kagan's dissent, she wrote that this effectively is the first, like, instance of the VRA is now going to be destroyed. She was saying that the VRA is now going to be destroyed by the Supreme Court. This was just the first chip to fall. And what's interesting, what the implications are if the VRA falls, is you've seen a lot of chatter in conservative circles about maybe requiring some sort of, like, civics exam in order to register to vote. Yeah, right. And this is, like, legitimate policy.
What a literacy test.
These are legit. Well, literacy test was the reason this was imposed. And to be fair, maybe to Steelman, you did see voter turnout shoot up after the VRA.
No, listen. In order to vote, you only have to read one paragraph, and it says, she wore a silhouette of clothing that was extraordinary and quite gauche.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That could be something. But I do think, a civics test of some sort, that could be interesting because you need that to immigrate to the country.
So speaking of civics and history, a lot of this comes back to South Carolina. We're talking about secession, essentially, and, maybe the civil crack-ups and everything. Well, here in South Carolina, you have, these three federal judges arguing for, that James Clyburn district to stay whole and this racially gerrymandered district. Well, Lindsey Graham voted for both Kagan and Sotomayor. He voted to confirm them. That's Lindsey Graham's judges that are arguing. Lindsey. I got to bring it back to South Carolina, of course.
I have an idea. Like, what if after this revolution and we take over and create one party rule? I'm half kidding, by the way. What if on all ballots, instead of voting for who you want, you get a list of the candidates, and then it lists the powers of the office and says, which person do you want to be in charge of the budget?
You just draw lines.
No. You have to write the person's name.
Okay.
You get a selection of names to choose from that are running for various offices. And then it would say something like this. You get a ballot and it says, which individual would you like to have the power in your district to vote on laws to be passed for this country? And then you got to write a name in.
Ketanji goes for President Camacho.
And if you write Joe Biden in that box, we just say, okay, Joe Biden for Congress. He got 17 votes. Then it asks, which person would you like to have executive authority over law enforcement and the military? It doesn't ask who you want to be president. It asks you who you want to do the job. Because then, there's no literacy test. It's just, you voted for Joe Biden for Congress.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Getting rid of the multiple choice aspect of voting is kind of intriguing, and it might.
Why is voting multiple?
I know. Like, if you write a name in and you misspell it, sorry, your vote doesn't count. Like, you got to know how to.
By the way, that's how
name.
Murkowski is a senator right now. In 2010, like Joe Miller won the primary, and the GOP RNC, they're obviously corrupt, went in heavy to make sure that Murkowski ran a write-in campaign. And then they wouldn't let Joe. They took over his campaign and wouldn't let her say bad things about Murkowski. She won her Senate seat in 2010 with a writing campaign, and it was people misspelling Murkowski, like all of them.
Would they count? They would count the misspellings.
Yeah, of course they counted them. Yeah.
That's reasonable. I mean, that's a reasonable. I wouldn't like if I was going to switch it over.
How hard can? How? Come on, Murkowski.
Nope.
Right. People would change their name to AB to make it real simple.
Ab.
No, I want to
see all the way down.
Push back against what you were saying, Tate. I do think the United States is fertile for a peaceful form of revolution. I think that's what we do every 4 years anyway. So it's seamlessly fabricated for it. Like not about secession, not about states leaving. It's about systems and rules changing from within. And I would consider that the revolution. And it's just how you define the word is really.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you'd be arguing with semantics at that point. I mean, I agree that Trump is transformational. I just don't know if he's revolutionary. I think you would see a complete upending of the American system as it is if Trump were revolutionary. By that I mean, like, quite literally, we would change our system of government. You would maybe see one of the branches shut down, et cetera, because that's what revolutions have looked like in other countries. But we're arguing over semantics. So, it just depends on what your meaning of revolution is.
Right, because you're talking about the far end of the ultimate revolution. That is, the government changes completely. Maybe the country gets a new name. But in terms of successful revolution, I'm talking politically and strategically, Trump is doing it the way that is most effective. Shutting down AID was a revolution. The USAID was the mechanism by which the government funded itself and its politicians for a permanent structure. And the Trump admin stopped that. Yep. One of the most important things in this country's history. That changed everything. Now they're trying to muster up a last bastion in Virginia, and they're not doing that well there either.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you define revolution as just a change in a political regime, which would be valid, I think you would look at, certain revolutions throughout history, and it was simply a regime change. I say simply a regime change. I'm putting the emphasis on regime change here. That Trump would absolutely be classified as a revolution because, he dethroned the Clintons, dethroned the Bushes, and dethroned, basically the Obama apparatus, all in 3 election cycles. There's something to that, specifically on the Bushes and Clintons, because I think everyone anticipated to be a Jeb Bush v. Hillary Clinton election in 2016. So in that regard, yeah, I suppose that would be sort of a peaceful revolution. But that wouldn't come in tandem with some serious, drastic, political changes.
I want to jump to this next story, which is the biggest pitfall for the Republicans coming into the midterms outside of the procedural stuff they're doing, which they may win with anyway. The economy is doing pretty bad. So this story from Entertainment, 9 major artists have canceled or postponed tour dates. Here's why. Not all of it is economic, but several major tours have been shut down because they can't sell tickets. That's just crazy.
She's sort of about that base. Just kind of.
Sort of.
I don't want to...
Well, she's all about that Ozempic.
Someone mentioned that Ticketmaster... I don't know, does Ticketmaster officially have a monopoly, or is that more of an opinion? I don't know.
There was some kind of ruling on it.
Yeah.
Some of these are totally legitimate reasons. I don't want to say all 9 cancellations, so like one person injured her throat or whatever.
That's sad that Post
Malone is just saying that he's canceling his first 2 dates because they're not ready. However, many people are speculating that the real reason many of these tours are outright canceled is because nobody will buy tickets.
Oh.
The question then is, why won't anyone buy tickets? The next question is, why is Subway shutting down 729 locations? And then the next obvious point is that gas is now above $4. And then interestingly, no one's buying World Cup tickets either. So we were having this discussion before the show started about the economy actually being kind of in bad shape right now. We're seeing that everywhere, basically. Everybody's been complaining about inflation. There doesn't seem to be an easy solution right now. The war is spiking gas prices in a meaningful way for regular people. That's going to be, look, there was a post I saw on Threads. Oh, I love Threads, by the way. It's just, guys, take a minute, go on to Threads if you have one. It's just all liberals talking to themselves. It's the craziest thing. They're they're virtue signaling. It's crazy. But I saw one post where they said not a single liberal is complaining about, just insert culture war issues. They were like, the only thing the Democrats are attacking right now is the price at the pump. Republicans are missing that big picture. And I think they're right about it. Republicans are very much still, what are conservatives concerned about? Epstein?
Right.
They're mad about Israel and Iran. Regular people don't even care about that.
Yeah.
They want now Iran is connected to the high gas prices. Don't get me wrong. But regular people won't, and I'm not trying to disparage your average working class guy or woman. They're going to the gas pump and they're going like, man, what's going on? Like $4.50 for gas. If you go to them and say, well, listen, I got to explain to you. The Strait of Hormuz right now has been mined, right? They're going to go, the what? I don't know what that means. What's going to happen? They're going to go to the voting booth and they're going to say, other guy.
Yep. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we've seen the last few jobs reports haven't been favorable. I mean, we're not exactly getting kicked in the teeth here. And this is like, people hear this on a political podcast and they're expecting shock and awe. And then all of a sudden you're talking about jobs reports. But like these sorts of things are what voters actually, determine who they're going to vote for off of. Because, voting is primarily based off of two things, is vibes. And that's what carried Trump in 2024. At least the package of policies were so interesting and intriguing. And he ran such a good campaign that the vibes are very high. And then the second component of why Trump won in 2024 was the gas prices were horrible. The gas prices were through the roof for a myriad of reasons, and people blame Joe Biden. They say, I have less money in my pocket. I'm out of a job, et cetera, so I'm going to go pull the lever for the other guy, like Tim said. So when you see like the last few jobs reports over the last few months, again, we're barely breaking even, and breaking even in jobs reports means you've created enough jobs or you've added enough jobs that would keep up with population growth. But typically in a good jobs report period, you would see about 200,000 jobs added. We've been seeing like 60,000 jobs added over the last few jobs reports. So again, this is just not good numbers. Like at the end of 2025, we were getting our teeth kicked in on the jobs reports numbers. So it's like little nerdy stuff like that actually does matter a lot when you're approaching a midterm election, because again, people are out of a job and they're gonna be like, that's because of Iran. I knew it was because of Iran, or they'll have some sort of reason why the guy in charge is responsible for them losing their job, and they'll punish them at the polls.
Dude, today I was shocked for the first time about fuel prices. It went up to $4.50, I think, or $4.40. It was the highest I've ever seen it in this area.
Pain at the pump. I mean, it's a real thing.
Diesel is over $6.
It's a real thing.
Tweet at Trump about it, and I'm like, bro, just calm down. Say it. Talk about it on the show. Yeah, it's a shock.
Well, Lindsey Graham is. I mean, look, the folks aren't wrong when they say, "Hey, we got a war," and then boom, price of gas is way through the roof. And look, there's some truth to that, right? And they're gonna blame guys like Lindsey Graham, who are like beating the drum for forever wars, and they never stop. They've never met guys like him. Have never met a war that they don't like. And by the way, then they come home and they say, "Hey, you need to send your kids to die for whatever cause is next." We're out of Ukraine, and now we're gonna go to the next one, on to the next one. And folks are just not having it.
What? Why do people keep voting for that guy?
It's a good question. We get that question a lot. The truth is he's never been challenged. That's the first truth. He's never credibly been challenged. Back to 2014, there were a couple of bucks in behind a good guy called Lee Bright, and Nancy Mace was in that race too. She only had $200,000-300,000, but total there was only about a million between them against Lindsey. And then in 20, he didn't even have a challenger. Some no-name guy had $10,000, and the baseline of antipathy for Lindsey Graham with a no-name guy with no money is like 25%. Like, so there's a lot of hatred for Lindsey Graham, but there's just never been a credible challenge. And Mark Lynch is the guy. He's got $5 million in. He's a successful businessman. He understands how the business cycle works, and that's what folks want. They want a business guy and not a bunch of lawyers, kind of to tie this all together.
I know Paul Dance pretty well. He's been on the show a few times. We've talked, had dinner together. He's great, and he was running, and so he put his support behind Mark as well.
He did. Paul Dance took his name off the ballot, and he has thrown his full voice behind Mark Lynch for Senate against Lindsey Graham. And he's campaigning on the trail. They're doing joint events. He's going out as a surrogate all over the state, helping just get everybody behind dumping Lindsey on June the 9th.
Man, I'm just hoping that in the Strait of Hormuz right now, for try to educate everybody. They're policing the strait now, doing guided escorts through for ships because Iran, of course, is threatening it. And my concern is the Trump admin doesn't actually care about prices or jobs or the economy. Like, they do care, but they're willing to prioritize things like the war in Iran because we're going to have a procedural midterm victory, meaning because of redistricting, they win regardless of whether or not they actually win the argument or the economy is bad.
Yeah, Trump said, like, tariffs. There's going to be short-term pain. This is another example of short-term pain. He thinks he's doing the global geopolitical right thing, and he's willing to cause some short-term pain. Thing is, if you hurt someone short-term, you hurt them hard enough short-term, it's going to cause a reaction.
Sorry. Breaking news correction. They're no longer guiding ships to the Strait of Hormuz. They're entering negotiations with Iran, so they're pausing that.
Okay.
Yeah, I struggle to believe that I'm not saying this is what you're saying, but the GOP, Trump is a different, obviously he's an enigma, but the GOP I don't think was making any calculations here when they just failed to invest in the Virginia redistricting fight. I mean, the Democrats put $60 million into it. The GOP didn't. I don't believe for a second that like Savita, he was like, oh yeah, but we know that there's gonna be a judge in southwestern Virginia that's gonna like issue an injunction. No, They didn't know that. They were like, let's get John Cornyn across the finish.
That's
Who
right.
doesn't love John Cornyn?
Throw 50 mil into Texas behind Cornyn.
Yeah, so okay, the GOP got bailed out, and now the Democrats might have wasted $60 million in Virginia. That's not GOP strategy, 4D chess. That's just them getting completely bailed out of like sheer
That's
luck.
what the GOP exists to do, by the way, guys. So, I mean,
Yeah.
so just so it's clear, like the RNC, the GOP, NRSC, NRCC exists solely to protect their leadership shills inside of their key committees, the Appropriations Committee, the Budget Committee. Lindsey Graham, chairman of the Budget Committee. We don't have a budget like Finance Committee. Those are those A committees. They literally tier the committees, right? And so that's what they exist to do.
I mean, the one thing I can say for South Carolina is, it's very progressive to elect a homosexual man as oftentimes as they did. I know that's kind of a joke, but most people think he's a gay man. I'm surprised South Carolina would be willing to vote for him.
Can I tell you what?
To be honest,
can I tell you what he does? So there are a surprising number of South Carolinians who are not aware of the like widely known proclivities of Mr. Lindsey Graham, in his private life. And the reason is because he actually spends a lot of money essentially propagandizing them with pictures of his like nieces and nephews as if he has a family. He literally lies and kind of pretends to have a family.
I want to clarify. I'm not saying he's gay. I'm saying most people in politics believe that he is.
That's right.
So when you see he's 70, right?
66, I believe.
66-year-old bachelor, and you go to the belt when everyone's like, you go to D.C. and you go to anybody who works in politics, they're going to tell you he's gay. I'm just saying that's surprising that South Carolina would have elected him so many times,
Yeah, that's right. It's a Bible Belt state.
Yeah.
It's very heavily Baptist and dispensational and Protestant, right? And that's not the kind of vibe that they tend to go along with. And I think that it's becoming more and more widely known now that there is this challenge. And Lindsey's desperate. Lindsey's buying Mark Lynch all kinds of name ID in the state that Mark's got $5 million and he's spending it. It's a real deal campaign. And we need all the help we can get, by the way.
And that's just the primary.
Just the primary. And what a patriot.
This is his own money?
All of his own money. What a patriot. Mark Lynch is a true patriot. And
wow.
A true Mr. Smith goes to Washington kind of a guy. Says, I just want a better life for my kids and my grandkids. And he says, I'm taking $5 million out of my retirement account, and it's going to help the Republic.
Why does Lindsey Graham want to go to war like all the time?
I don't know. Lindsey, I don't know him. I haven't talked to him yet, but he seems like he's detached when he talks. I don't know if you guys listen to him, like do interviews and talk. He seems like he's kind of like not really with it.
He's the kind of guy where it's like you and your friends are going to hang out. It's like a Saturday night. And you're like, hey, yo, Tate, like, what do you want to do tonight? And Tate's like, I don't know, there's like a new cosmic bowling alley they just opened up. And you're like, Ian, what do you think? And you're like, we can go, there's an open mic. And then Lynn's like, we can go to war with Iran. And we're like, anyway, so there's a bar, there's bench warmers and rants. And he goes, war with Iran, anybody? And we're like, what are you talking about? Nobody wants to go to war with Iran, dude. Why do you keep bringing it up?
Well, he's been drunk on air. I don't know if you guys have seen a couple of times in the last month or so.
I think that's also a rumor.
He's literally been drunk on air, and he was drunk. He was getting in his car, and he was drunk, and he was actually literally carrying the drink.
Oh, wow.
Wait, he was driving?
No, well, say he has drivers, right? He was.
Okay, I mean, like, I'm not gonna complain about a guy having a beer.
Of course,
but
but
I'm gonna complain about him wanting to go to war with Iran.
And also with
Maybe the
Lindsey
alcohol
Graham,
contributes.
and with Lindsey Graham, like you got to look at this guy as just a pure ladder climber. And if you like are in and around DC, consistently the worst people you'll ever met are these like ladder climbing types, and he's the epitome of that. Where if you go back to 2016, where he like ran for president, by the way, I don't think people would even remember that. He like tried to run for president. He called Trump a xenophobe, a racist. He called him a jackass. Like, he was cruel to President Trump. And then he said he voted for Evan McMullen.
He did.
And it's like, okay, It's one thing if you're like one of these neocons that like, just said, oh, I didn't vote or whatever. But it's like to actively try and undermine the Republican is crazy. And that's kind of unforgivable in a lot of ways. If you haven't like directly come out and like made amends for it by supporting Trump's policy in any meaningful ways. Just coming back out and being like an establishment shill is far different than like guys that have sort of rehabilitated. Like, J.D. Vance is a good example of a guy that was opposed to Trump, far less consequential because he wasn't in elected office at the time. But then he's reoriented his policy to actually like reflect what the sort of Trump base supports. Lindsey Graham has not done it at one instance. It's just no humility. He's just like a loser, quite frankly.
Let's jump to this story from the New York Times. Published today, quote, "When you think of it, we shouldn't even have an election." That is a quote from Donald Trump from Reuters. 5 takeaways from the Reuters interview with President Trump, in which he did literally say, they say, the president expressed frustration that his Republican Party could lose control of the U.S. House or the Senate in this year's midterms elections, citing historical trends that have seen the party in power lose seats in the second year of the presidency. Quote, "It's some deep psychological thing, but when you win the presidency, you don't win the midterms," Trump said. He boasted that he had accomplished so much that, quote, "when you think of it, we shouldn't even have an election." So the New York Times has compiled this article where they've brought up every time he said something to that effect. In March of 2020, "I have a right to do a lot of things that people don't even know about." In August of 25, "I have a right to do anything I want to do. I'm the president of the United States of America." In an interview with the New York Times, Trump said, "Do you see any checks on your power?" When they asked, "Do you see any checks on your power or to the world stage?" He responded, "Yeah, there is one thing, my own morality, my own mind. It's the only thing that can stop me, and that's very good."
Dude,
Listen, I'm sorry, I'm just real quick. Sorry.
More. Good.
If the Democrats weren't so insane, I'd be concerned.
Well, I'm a little concerned, but that's kind of my state of mind right now. I'm like, can we hold on? Can we like ride the bull through the finish line?
He's such a great performer, though. You got to love it. You just got to love it. I mean, it's hilarious. He triggers the heck out of them, and it's great. It's hilarious.
If we had let's just say like this, like a C+ charisma Democrat who wasn't insane. I mean, like you look at a 2004 Democrat that says we shouldn't have open borders, we shouldn't have illegal immigration. You look at a 90s Democrat.
John Edwards.
Yeah, seriously. Give me that guy, mid-tier charisma, he's going to beat Trump.
Yeah,
the Democrats are absolutely insane, though. And so the shocking thing is, much to counter what Trump is saying, when he's like, well, you lose the midterms, Democrat favorability is worse than Republican favorability right now. By like 4 points, Democrats are underwater, which should not be happening in this cycle. The trend usually is the president does things, pisses people off, and so then everyone says, well, I'll vote for the other party. This time around, the polling shows, yes, individually in congressional districts, they're leaning Democrat, but these are single districts in key areas. The generic ballot right now is tied, and favorability is the Republicans have it relative to Democrats. Democrats are underwater compared to Republicans. This is actually insane.
Well, you've still got the weirdo factor on the Democrat side of the ledger. There's just a bunch of weirdos, and the country is still in this long hangover from these weirdos having been in charge, and they're like, oh my gosh, we can't.
Look at Katie Porter.
Yeah,
she does this commercial where she's like, I'm Katie Porter and I'm a mom and, I've got kids. And my thought on this commercial was, I understand what they're trying to do and it's not wrong. She's not campaigning for governor. She's saying, I'm just like you. And then in the end, she goes, now will you all please get out of my shot, which is a reference to when she screamed at her staffer. That's a great move for political junkies. That is a terrible move for regular voters who are going to go, I don't get it. What was that commercial? What is your argument? The Democrats have zero charisma. Even AOC is surface level culture war garbage. And
or self-awareness. They also have no self-awareness. I mean, that's a perfect example of just totally unself-aware on behalf of these geeks.
Trump. Did you see Trump talking about Ilhan Omar? Oh my God, is amazing. I mean, I don't know if it's an old clip or whatever, but he's like, and then you got Ilhan Omar. She married her brother, I think. And you can't do that, but otherwise, very lovely couple, but you can't do that. It's just so good.
I think Gavin Newsom.
Stand up.
He is. I hope he does stand up when he retires.
A good bit.
Gavin Newsom, I think, is the most level-headed Democrat and probably the most realistic challenger to the Republican Party.
He's been campaigning in South Carolina.
I can't think of a more.
Gavin Newsom has been coming to South Carolina to visit. And
he's the guy
gearing up.
Or I should say the most level-headed presidential candidate from the Democratic
Party. He sat down with Charlie and then pattered on the issue of trans kids, and then the next opportunity flipped his opinion back.
Yeah, but I think it's calculated. I think he's very smart, very, very cool. people, he looks the part. I think he would give the Republicans a good debate.
He doesn't
need that. You need to see the best out of these guys from real opposition. And I don't think anyone but Gavin's going to be able to provide that.
He doesn't look the part, though. He looks like an action figure of the part.
You got to get rid of that hair gel.
Gavin Newsom looks like a guy who plays the president in a movie, not a president.
Yeah, if you go get out of the hair gel, do like cool water in your hair when you get out of the shower. Let it air dry.
Well, he looks like he's got work done.
I think it works though. I got to say, like, it's a casting job, and he's pretty well cast. And I don't.
For a U.S. president, when you think about who our presidents are, you need some gruff. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he has got it.
Yeah, Mitt Romney couldn't get it done, and he too perfectly coiffed, right?
Obama had charisma. When did you guys? So this is a big issue when DeSantis was announcing his candidacy. I'm sorry, and he does that X space, which was a terrible idea, and he goes, "Well, I'm here to bring back the great American." I don't remember what he said. What did he say?
He had like
something gay.
Yeah,
he had like a whole trailer, and it was just really bad.
And it was really bad. And Barack Obama, on stage in front of 10,000 people, says, "We will win this presidency," or something like that. And everyone's screaming, and he's loud, and he's raw. I'm like, you got to have that. Gavin Newsom does not have that.
Yeah.
Gavin Newsom has the Weasley, it's got a DeSantis vibe to him. Yeah. I like DeSantis. DeSantis is doing great in Florida, but he wasn't going to make it as president.
Yeah, DeSantis definitely like rehabbed his image really well, because that was like a disaster. And also he had some sort of consultant giving him terrible advice where he
Jeff Rowe.
Yeah, and he was like, what you should do is you should emulate Trump. So, Trump will come out and he's like, we're going to beat the hell out of the left. And everyone's like, yeah. And then DeSantis would come out and he'd be like, we're going to slit the throat of wokeness. And everyone was like, dude, whoa, what is wrong?
No. The elevator boots.
Oh, yeah, the elevator boots.
You could see like his foot pressed against the front of the boot. It was clear that he was wearing lifts.
Newsom, who would be another? Because there's another guy, Rahm Emanuel, I think you guys have talked about. I don't know him at all.
He didn't got it.
Okay, then I can't think of another human other than
Democrats
AOC.
don't have it, and Republicans have too many.
They got that AOC, Gavin Newsom.
AOC ain't never going to win the presidency. I mean, well, maybe in 30, 40 years, but not right now.
Who will they run? Kamala. I just heard Kamala's considering running
back. Hillary's going to make
She'll get less votes.
Watch Hillary.
Kamala's
Hillary will be
dominating the polling right now for the Democrats by like 30, 40 points.
And if she wants to run,
I got to be honest. If Hillary actually came up, but this time she dropped the guys and just dressed like the necromancer she is, I'd have more respect for her.
I'd listen to her.
I'd be like, she's being honest now.
This whole discussion is fascinating. I don't think if you guys remember, like in your civics class, they had this story about the 1960 presidential election where it was Nixon v. Kennedy. And the story goes something along the lines of, in the presidential debate, it was the first ever televised presidential debate. And Kennedy and Nixon were debating, and Kennedy, he's like tanned and like had good posture, and he was smiling and that sort of thing. And then Nixon was like, this is the stories. He was like sweating and unshaved and unkempt and stuff. And so what they said was, the polling for radio listeners, they all said, well, Nixon, performed quite well. I think he held his own. But then the television, watchers said, well, Kennedy was obviously the decisive victor there. And I remember, like, people would always repeat that in civics class. And I just remember I looked up the picture, and, like, you can't even tell any of that is true with Nixon.
The resolution was a bit, and the screens were so tiny. Here's an idea.
I think the election was just stolen.
No one can announce their presidency. All candidates are anonymous. You don't know their names. And we go through a primary where the candidates, they can buy billboards and say, candidate 47, quote. And you don't know who it is. And if you like what they're saying, I will enact this policy. Then when it comes to the primary, you can choose candidate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, et cetera, et cetera. And then when it comes to the general, you still don't know who you're electing.
Sortition.
Well, you're voting for the ideas that you've collected around the candidate.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah,
and then like some like Gollum-looking dude goes like, "Thank you for voting for me."
I mean, there's some libertarian theory that sortition, like literally just total lottery, or the phone book. Then the phone book thing is like anybody out of the phone book.
I actually really like the idea of what's called Demarchic Congress. That's where you get congressional duty. So the way it would work is one day you hear a knock on the door and there's a guy standing there with like a sling bag, and you open it and you're like, "Can I help you?" And he goes, "Certified mail for, Mr. Brown." And then Tate would be like, "What is it?" And it's like, "Oh, I got Congress duty." And it's like, in it is a check for like $2,000 so you can come to DC to serve your term, to like get you there. And they're going to be like, "Okay, you're going to be in Congress this month. We're going to have a bunch of bills presented. and then you have to serve a month or 2 months in Congress. Then you go back home and you're not in Congress duty anymore. And the reason why some argue for it is that you're not going to be in Congress long enough to insider trade or benefit from it. And if you vote for something that betrays the people, you'll come home to an angry mob.
Yeah, perfect. It couldn't be worse than it is now.
Right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you did read like some of these like local posts back in the day when guys would get elected. A lot of them would like get elected against their will, right? Like they would just be like, "This guy is awesome. You should," and then they would push him across the finish line. And actually, you kind of had this with Eisenhower a little bit, where Eisenhower never really seemed to like have presidential aspirations, but he was just so beloved in the country that you actually had both parties begging him to run on their ticket, which is really funny.
He was the guy that basically won World War II.
Effectively,
Dwight Eisenhower, dude.
And Marshall. Yeah,
I think that's great leaders when they're begged to serve. When they're called to duty and they say, "Yes, I will."
This is apparently how Athens did it. Officials were appointed at random every year.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's called
that's
demarchy.
the difference between like monarchy, where people make the argument. The thing about monarchies is they're very agile because one guy lives for 40 years. He knows what's going to happen in 30 years. He plans long. He can move fast. Whereas if you have constant revolution of new people, the disorgan is,
Except at scale, the problem is a singular authority or committee can't adapt fast enough to a massive economy.
Right.
That's why these, like the Soviet Union, did not work. And that's why China adapted by doing a hybrid between communism and capitalism, which the United States does all the same with what's called a mixed economy.
Yeah. So in the sense of, I guess you would say dictators, monarchs, et cetera, they're much more agile at the foreign policy level, right? Like they can make 30, 40, 50-year plans for your geopolitical strategy. But to Tim's point, if something goes wrong in the economy, or if you need to make economic adjustments, they're not as reactive to the people. They're not getting punished at the ballot boxes often. And so that's why the American economy is so dynamic, is because these congressmen, they know the one thing they can't afford to screw up on is the economy.
I'm going to explain it in a way that regular people can understand. Donald Trump's at a slot machine, and he's hitting $1,000 spins on Huff and Puff, right? He's just hitting that button, and it's spinning. And the Democrats are the wife going, "What are you doing? You're wasting all our money on a slot machine." And he's like, "Just let me do it." And then right before he's about to hit the last one, which would have hit the jackpot, she grabs his wrist and says, "We're going home now." And he's like, "But I just lost 50 grand. And she's like, "You're not losing our last 1,000. But if you just would have hit that button." See, that's the thing about the midterms. You got to let Trump cook. Let him spin the wheel until he hits that jackpot. I'm kidding, by the way, but
it's kind of true. It's that meme where the guy's like mining for diamonds and he stops right before he.
Oh yeah,
that's right.
That's what it is.
With the AI revolution, I keep using that word. I was trying to stop using that word so much. It's like hold on for dear life. Let's go. The whole entire economy is shifting and changing right now. Elon Musk's plaintively said multiple times, we're moving away from a money economy to literal electricity and the ability to move a payload around. If you have those two things, you're not going to need any money at all. Anyone's not going to need it.
Well, can we? So there's this viral story right now that I got to do more research into, but Ro Khanna being accused of serious malfeasance. Yeah, there's this huge report that was put out using a bunch of data. It's available on GitHub. You can run it. And apparently he's like one of the top insider traders, and let's just say there's a lot of accusations against him for impropriety, and complaint with the ethics committee has been filed. I'm reading this report and I'm just thinking, the wealthy people in our country, again, this is a populist argument. The left will claim it, but no, it's a populist argument. There are too many people in this country who make money for doing things that add no value.
Yeah, no, I think it's 100% true. I mean, look, there's something to be said about like hereditary bureaucrats. Like in England or in the United Kingdom, they've abolished the House of Lords, the hereditary peers, as in people that inherited their seat in the House of Lords from their father, grandfather, etc. And there's actually something to be said about sort of being primed to rule. Like, okay, you know that your one job in life is to do well by your people, and you're being primed for that position. There is something to be said about that. On the opposite end of the spectrum, there's actually, and people roll their eyes at this, but there's something to be said about direct democracy. And by direct democracy, I mean like they actually propose a policy and then everyone in the entire country weighs in. Because if you actually look at how this works in practice, you actually end up with a conservative policy platform. Typically, like Switzerland's a good example. Every time a sort of popular liberal policy comes up to the docket in Switzerland, voters reject it. And anytime there's, again, like more conservative policy proposals, voters reward that and they vote for that. Like it's going to go up for vote soon, is they want to cap their population at 10 million, which is effectively going to like destroy their immigration system, which is great. It looks like that's going to pass. Yeah, it looks like it's going to pass. Another great example is California, where if you remember California, they used to have lots of ballot measures. For example, gay marriage went up in like 09, 08, 09. Voters rejected it. They said, no, we want to keep it as it is. So there's something to be said about both. And I think maybe the United States, the Republican model actually does kind of...
In 2014, Oregon rejected giving illegal aliens driver's licenses by 2-1. It was 66, the 30, whatever. And they just totally destroyed it. And the SAVE Act comes to mind when you're talking about these sorts of things. 85% of the population wants the SAVE Act. It's just we have fair elections.
Yeah.
And that's the context of this whole uncomfortableness we have here.
I want to jump to this story from the Daily Mail. Religious leaders told prepare now for UFO disclosure to unleash Bible-changing revelations. Perry Stone, a well-known evangelist, author, and Bible teacher from Tennessee, warned that fellow pastors were recently invited to a secret meeting with U.S. intelligence officials to prepare for the release of secret files on extraterrestrials. According to Stone, the officials warned a small group of pastors with a large reach in the Christian community that the government was about to release reports and possibly videos of aliens and spacecraft which were not from this planet. Seriously, Donald Trump recently just said they're going to be releasing very interesting UFO files. Now, others have tweeted corroborating this claim, saying that they were in these meetings. I don't know if these meetings actually happened, but considering everything we've heard with these missing scientists, some of these crazy stories, as well as one very important linear element to the story. Over the past several years, they have been trickling out information on aliens and UFOs that I believe, whether intentionally or not, will desensitize us to the official announcement of the existence of aliens. For example, you had Tim Burchett saying, man, if the people that government heard what I was briefed on, this country would be chaos. And you had Matt Gaetz saying alien hybridization programs are happening, which is weird. George Santos coming on the show and saying before entering Congress, he did not believe in aliens. After leaving, he now does. This has been 6+ years of information slowly being released in the news that has people talking about the existence of aliens. Strange sightings in outer space, weird vehicles and objects, the Oumuamua thing. Now this story, the conspiracy theory, is that this is all intentional, trickling out of information, readying people so that finally when they announce aliens are real, they're going to go, duh. It's like been 6 years. We've heard all these stories before. We're not surprised.
Okay, so
we're being groomed for the probe.
Yeah, if you're trying to take over someone's immune system and you give enough of the virus, they'll be infected. So when you give them the thing, they'll be infected. But if you give them not enough, they get
vaccination.
They become immune. I become immune to it, but some people probably are.
It's actually an idea that you brought up a long time ago, information vaccination, where you provide someone bits of the story in advance. So when the big news hits and they see it, they already understand and they can't be tricked.
Yeah. And there's a segment that are ready for it, for whatever. Bless you, sir.
Thank you. In this instance, they've trickled out little bits of the story, and thus our psyches have adapted to it to the point where if they showed up, I think the next move, the reason why this seems plausible to me is if I was tasked, they said, Tim, we want to unveil, aliens are real, we want to tell the whole world about it. What do we do? I'd say, well, the biggest concern, of course, is going to be various religious groups, because the existence of aliens could defy their moral or their faith-based worldview. This has been written about time and time again in sci-fi and otherwise. You will have to go to religious leaders and ask them for their advice and how to guide those who are faithful to figure out the right way to release information, whatever it may be.
So I got to ask about the Smith-Mundt Act. Is that still in effect? Did Barack Obama repeal put it in place?
So the misconception people have on that is that it meant that the Voice of America could be rebroadcast in the United States. There's no circumstance where, let me just make this, people think Obama made propaganda legal. Mm-hmm. No, he made it so that the existing international propaganda we have could be broadcast in the United States. The CIA has always been propagandizing the United States, like the American people, illegally. So Obama didn't have to do anything about that.
It was just already there.
Yeah.
So is that what this is, though? Is this like MK Ultra, whatever the new next iteration of it is?
Or it could be aliens.
I think it is. Personally, I think that, and I'll say, I think the reason they're going to churches is because people that believe Earth religions are believing without evidence or without proof. They have evidence from their book and their teachings, but they don't have the scientific proof. And those people that believe things without proof, I think, are easier to propagandize.
Remember when
they don't need
touching on that? Remember when they found that alien in Mexico? They said it was like an alien body. like I think it was like 3 years.
Well, but those were all fake. It was
they
cake.
totally were.
It wasn't cake, but this homemade video where they're like, it's cake. The point I was going to make, though, is that if I was tasked with doing this, with like, if they said, Tim, how do we unveil aliens to the world? I'd say, go to religious leaders. First, I'd say, trickle out stories, sightings, people you can trust. The military, they've got one of the highest trust ratings to the American public. They're going to say they witnessed it. People believe them. Then you're going to put out stories of scientific reports of things in the sky. Talk to religious leaders. The next move I'd say is release video that purports to show something that might be some kind of body. You don't want the video released to show an alien outright. People would just not believe it. They'd freak out. You want a video showing what may be a body and some kind of unexplainable phenomenon, and it's got to be certified by a military witness. That's what I would do. I'm not saying it's what's going to happen. If a video gets released by the U.S. government and you've got a guy in the Air Force being like, I personally filmed this thing and watched it happen, and it's a video that seems to be of potentially a strange creature, we don't know for sure. What the best way to do it is to be like a silhouette, hard to see, on a military operation with night vision goggles or something, and the whatever it is moves its hand and an object moves along with it. And then the person goes, move, move, move. And then the video ends really quickly. And they say, we don't know what happened. We don't know what it was. For all we know, is a natural phenomenon in a person, but it opens up people's minds, start asking questions. And then the story goes massively viral. Joe Rogan talks about it 500 times. Then people start going, I wonder if it's aliens. Or like that story at the mall in Florida, where people were like, they saw something there and a weird thing happened. You trickle that out. That's the first video. And then people are going to be less shocked if another video comes out showing something more clear, and then 2-3 years later with more moves like this, people are going to be like, oh yeah, another one of these aliens.
My personal immunity, I'm ready for deep fakes of all kinds of videos, but I'm sorry, just as you were talking, I'm thinking this modern, you're not going to expect the next big one, the next big false flag or whatever, that they're going to use technology that can implant thoughts in your head, dreams, literally. So people they'll be having dreams of these aliens. And then the government's going to start saying we're in contact with them. But for all we know, they could be using high frequency from orbit to Havana syndrome.
So I fully expect them to like sort of like Operation Bluebeam Jesus, like on a white chariot with horses and stuff like that. And then there'll be another sort of like COVID type scenario. And then that'll be the rapture because like a bunch of, 100, billions of people will disappear.
So they do have the technology with like talking plasma to teleport imagery that you can project sound through. So like a giant, like a one-off event of like Jesus in the sky or something, and then paired with like some cataclysm.
It's a limited illusion too. I mean, it's on TV. It's not like, it's like our wars now. Our wars, we go to war now based on a limited illusion, right? That's what October 7th was. October 7th was absolutely a limited illusion. I think we can say that. Obviously, whatever's going on in Ukraine, we're talking about limited illusions. Now we're talking about whatever's happening in we know in Iran, there wasn't even any actual like fissile nuclear material. And so, I mean, according to Tulsi. And so, and then we get dragged into these conflicts. The future of war is now, they know they're going to have a hard time with, legit World War III, right? You can't muster the will to drag everybody into that. So what you do is you do these little limited illusions, and then you got your $1 trillion.
Right. That's actually the kind of the plot of it in 1984 is the forever limited war across the sea with the new enemy, and the old enemy is now your ally, and you've always been fighting the old enemy. You've always been fighting the new guy. Don't even think about it. Just watch the TV. Very much. And to do that with like an alien psyop or something with a Jesus psyop, and then if the internet goes down, like if something tragic happens after people, it's like the big news cycle, and then the power goes out.
Like the radio War of the Worlds, right? Remember that? Like everybody thought it was real.
Yeah.
But if I don't know. I don't know what would.
They're angling for another one of those in the new medium, though, right?
Like if the U.S. were to do that to itself. And cut out their own internet. Yeah, let's go to the next story. But
No. We're still on the same story. Another reported attendee, American evangelist and podcaster Tony Merkel, added, the government officials who held the meeting expressed concerns with the impact of UFO disclosure on organized religion. Merkel said, I came in contact with these guys more than a year ago now, and I've been in touch with them, communicating with them, and their heart is to prepare the body of Christ for what's coming. These guys are a part of, let's say, they're Christians in intelligence operations, and they are specifically geared towards initially, it was to gather evidence and data on what's going on behind the scenes within the disclosure community. The three pastors warned that when the U.S. government finally releases the historic report about UFOs and extraterrestrials, it will not just be surprising news. They believe it will be part of a plot designed to pull people away from faith in Jesus.
Man, they might they might actually attack the Earth from outer space and say it was like that could be a false flag. It's like we know
it's Q 4.0, right? I mean, if you think about it, like there's this faith that these folks have.
You know, the funny thing is, it's not going to unify the left and the right.
No.
The left is going to be like, they can just come here and take all of our stuff. We're fine with it. And the right's going to be like, they got to immigrate here legally. You can't just come from outer space.
So you were saying that they
Mass
think
amnesty for the invaders.
Mass amnesty, exactly. Give them benefits.
they think that it's
They're new voters.
they think so. The narrative is the military. These people are concerned that if this happens without the pastors being prepped, their faith will be.
Well, what they're saying is these guys are going to them and saying, prepare your congregations because we've got proof of aliens existing. And the pastor is saying, I think they're trying to trick people to ditch Christianity.
Yes, they are. That's what Q was. I got to say, that's what Q was. If you look tracks like 17, 18, coming into 2020, remember Q, a lot of people were saying, oh, this is the first time that I've had such a spiritual experience. It was very spiritual in nature. Q was. Okay, in the first iteration. Q, I call it Q 1.0. And it was trust the plan. Don't worry about it. There's white hats. There's tens of thousands of sealed indictments, yada, yada. You don't have to do anything. We've got this going into 2020. What happens? Trump loses. As soon as that happened, there was this massive crisis in faith among all of those Q people who were prone to religion. Of course, a lot of them are very good Christian people. But as soon as Trump lost and Biden won, and what I believe, of course, was an election that wasn't rightly decided, many tens and thousands, hundreds of, and probably millions of people's faith, literal faith in Jesus, was utterly shattered.
So those people have a vacuum of
And I see the
faith.
same thing, same pattern kind of playing out here.
Oh, so this is like the disruption of the Christian version of Q. Like if Christianity was Q, they're about to shatter their will.
Yeah, no, I think that there's an overt operation specifically targeted at Christians in order to try to destroy their faith. I say this as a person of faith. I fully believe in Christ.
That's what I'm.
What I was getting
concerned
at, yeah, what I was getting at earlier with the alien stories, like my brother called me after that and was like, "Man, I'm really going to need your help explaining to me how this squares with religion, because if there actually are aliens and they tell me that, that's going to blow my whole world apart." So, like, that is kind of
Correct, sir.
That's it.
Man, I think Jesus was awesome, and I think God's real. I don't want people to believe things without proof, but
There's a lot of proof for Christ. That's another show.
I don't know if proof is the right word. There's a lot of evidence, but there's some evidence, I would say. But a lot of it's based on its own statement, so it's hard to...
The problem is most things we think we know don't have proof.
Yeah, science is about where I draw the line, generally. Science, the scientific method and science.
Like, what proof do you have that the Earth is round?
Right.
You have a lot of evidence.
Pictures and, yeah.
Admittedly, a lot of evidence. The issue is that the word proof means something, typically refers to something you can see that shows it is irrefutable. And the challenge with the Earth being round is that it's a collection of evidences that you would need to analyze. So, for instance, when they do the test where you take two pieces of wood with a hole in them, move them really far apart, shine a light through one end, do you have to raise the camera to see it as a common test for the curvature of the Earth? You would have to understand the math. Otherwise, you would not understand what you were seeing.
And another piece of evidence is like every other celestial body that we know of almost is round, is a sphere that we can tell. We can see them plaintively. So it sort of assumes that we are, but it's just an assumption based off of a heavy dose of evidence. Still an assumption, technically. I don't know, man. I've had my ups and downs and love and hate with religions and religiosity, but I fear for those people that they will be twisted by government narratives, and which could be even worse than believing in the faith of Christianity itself without proof.
Yeah, well, because what's the comment, the problem, reaction, solution? And now we're the government and we're here to help. I mean, that's the setup, right? Now you need more government.
Dude, if people gave up Christianity, I feel like that'd be real bad. I'm not even a Christian, but the morals are like guiding lights for humanity, for a large segment of it. And if the military tried to take, I don't think you call it the military, but if the machine tried to take people away from that, and like one thing, if like, yeah, the Catholic Church lied to you, whatever. Jesus was still legit. He was hip to it, dude. He talked to God. God loved him. God knew him. And so God may very well be real, but that doesn't mean that you gotta, like, I don't know, obsess over everything they tell you is true and say, okay.
I don't know where you're going.
Just the Bible.
About
They're like,
aliens.
this thing happened and this thing happened.
Well, to bring it back around,
We're talking about aliens.
Yeah, I know. It's just one big spin in my head. That's right.
I mean, there is some truth to the fact that, like, even if you're not even remotely Christian, your presuppositions as a Westerner are still built on fundamentally like Christian values, Christian morality, et cetera, et cetera. And you even see this with how countries, and specifically in like Central Europe, that are citing very high rates of atheism, the way that they still perceive morality and the way they still conduct themselves are still very reminiscent of Christianity. So it's not even the fumes of Christianity. It's like it has a very lingering effect, and when you construct your society around that, you can't really decouple it from it. I think the only way to truly decouple Christianity from Western society would be to destroy Western society itself.
Entirely replace Christians on the North American continent, maybe?
Yeah, I mean,
Would that do it?
It's certainly a strat.
The world.
I found that you can be skeptical about the facts in the Bible that they tell you this thing happened. Be skeptical about that, but still live the virtue of the Bible. And that would be, I think, that's a healthy way to live, even if no matter what, just beginning and then decide later if you want to get into
That's what's happening. Is, I mean, pretty much all of these Western countries, their legal codes and just the way that society has decided to construct like ethics and that sort of thing stem from sort of biblical commandments and biblical morality. And so even if you try to decouple yourself from Christianity as much as possible, make all these announcements, et cetera, adopt social positions that are maybe abrasive to like conventional Christian morality, still your fundamental assumptions are going to be predicated on Christianity. And there's just no way out of that unless you just cease to become a Westerner. I mean, that is just, it's directly intertwined with the West. So, okay, you could have the window dressing of, you're pro-gay marriage or pro-abortion, that sort of thing, but it's like your fundamental assumptions will still come from Christian morality.
if people are taken away from the belief, because I think, Carter, were you saying the Bible itself claims that there are no other aliens are not real, and that's the concern?
I mean, I don't really know. I have not read it myself. Like in
The presumption
entirety.
would be that
But yeah,
we're the only sentient
So
beings.
if that changes and people are like, oh, maybe the Bible's full of it, am I really a Christian? You can still have faith in God and live the virtue of Christianity without having to think you have to
Or-
believe every word in that thing.
yeah,
When the aliens come, they're demons.
that too. Or they can all coexist in one thing. Kind of like God is like one circle and aliens are in the smaller circle inside of that.
because that's kind of been the
Do the demons get to vote?
Well, if the Democrats are going to let them do it.
yeah, and I'm not trying to use this word to be mean, but I think the workaround people have utilized when they're approaching the alien decision is to say that, this is coming from like devout Christians, is to say that they're demons. My personal position, I don't think there's any extraterrestrial life whatsoever. So I'm not terribly worried. And I will say that, again, if there were, that might challenge my assumptions.
Well,
about-
Why do you
Ice-
think there
ice
is
on
not?
because there hasn't been any evidence. I mean, it's like, okay, there's sort of indications, or maybe you could
You mean intelligent,
Yeah, because I think they have
comparable to
life,
humans?
bacterial life on Mars.
yeah, but like as far as like actual sentient life, I just don't think that.
Yeah, intelligent, fully formed.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if they find a bacteria on a super planet or something, I'd be like, okay.
It's the moon. The moon has changed this place. It apparently was another planet that smashed through Earth, 4 billion years ago. Planet Theia, if you want to watch, and came out the other side, molten globe that like cooled. It's a unique moon in the solar system, and like universally, you don't see these moon types. Just hangs there, and it's resultant in these big-brained mammoids. These
Mammoids?
these tall thunder waves. Yeah, these
Thunder waves?
crazy creatures. I was thinking.
I don't know what your religion is, but it must be a wild read.
The Nephilim.
so wild.
The Nephilim. It's the
yeah.
Nephilim.
It's be as still as you
If
can.
Ian wrote down his religion book, he'd create like a new Harry Potter series.
do it.
Roald Dahl wrote the book. It's called the BFG. The Big
The
Family
BFG.
Big freaking giant. Yeah.
So without our moon, I don't know that any planet can sustain intelligent, sentient life. But without a moon like ours, and without two planets having collided, I don't know that one would form like that.
There's the common stat that's cited so much by Christian apologists that it's almost kitschy at this point, but it is like pretty impactful and true, is that, again, if the Earth were suspended, maybe 100, 200 miles closer to the sun or further away from the sun, then it wouldn't be sustainable for human life. And so I know that's commonly cited and people roll their eyes.
Not only that, but the atmosphere that we have allows us to manipulate elements with combustion, with heat. The proper balance of oxygen allows us to make fire, to extract different metals from each other. If there was intelligent life on a water planet, they ain't going nowhere. If the planet was slightly larger, we could not launch rockets into space and make satellites. The gravity versus the propulsion from the fuel, the ratio would be off. It is perfect, this planet, for us to do exactly what we're doing.
Amen.
And that being said, You could make up 1,000,001 arguments for like maybe there's a different planet where everything's made of magnets or something, so weird stuff happens. I don't know.
Yeah, because
for us, the stuff we've discovered has been perfectly aligned.
They think when the moon formed that what happened was the sun spit out like roughly 28 planetoids, just like I think through a Z pinch or through like a binary star collision, it ejaculated all this matter into the solar system, and 2 planets, because they're magnetic and like planets are like diminished magnetism, they're neutralized because they're spheroid, and I think that's what gravity is, but they're pulled towards each other naturally. So if a star were to spit out a bunch of planetoids, it's definitely, I don't know what the odds would be of 2 of them getting into the same orbital path and smashing into each other. But
Perfectly,
that
by the way.
Gravity's a theory too, by the way. I
the
love how
interesting
gravity's
thing-
a theory.
Have you guys ever heard of the puddle allegory?
Not sure.
There is a puddle of water, looks around and says, wow, I fit perfectly in this hole. This hole must have been made for me. Crazy. Doesn't understand that actually the puddle fits to the hole, not the other way around. The only issue is that that argument is often presented by atheists when they say that people look at Earth, they think, why is it so perfect for us here? It must have been made for us, instead of arguing that we actually conform to the Earth instead of the other way around. The problem is the moon. The moon is the perfect distance from the Earth to the sun to create effectively a 1-for-1 eclipse. Now, I'm not saying that's proof of anything. I'm just saying that kind of negates the we fit perfectly on the Earth when something outside of the Earth exists in a way that is also mathematically unique. Not to mention, Jupiter is unique.
What are the odds?
Jupiter is a great filter for the solar system that Earth likely could not have life if there was not Jupiter, because Jupiter creates a gravitational pull that keeps debris from slamming into Earth and the inner planets. It's pretty wild when you look at all the math.
Yep. It's pretty crazy.
Oh,
Now,
man.
that still does, arguably, one could say that's still puddle theory in that it's a tremendously astronomically difficult system to put together for life to exist.
Right.
But in the end, I look at all that stuff, and I think the problem with all of these arguments from atheists is that the presumption is that God must be like a literal guy floating around in a cloud who like puts his arms down and goes, and like makes things happen, instead of the universe is billions of years old and there is a great mechanism, a logos in play that the plan is beyond our comprehension, and you don't need a guy to magically appear in front of you to snap his fingers and make a sandwich appear for there to be a structure to God's plan.
The mystery of faith.
Yeah, like I think of it often as a force field God, like in concentric force fields, like fields within fields within fields, all twisting and bringing things together. So like when you pray gratitude for having something in life, that's why that will appear. Or oftentimes why like placebo effect works, because God is literally in this conception twisting and pulling things towards you in all matters, space-time. It seems like it's vacuous, but there's really density in all of this, and God's in all of it. All these force fields spinning.
Well, let's jump to this story from CNN. 3 people to be evacuated from hantavirus hit cruise ship in coming hours. This story is crazy. 6 people, I believe, was the latest report, got hantavirus. 3 died. People on the ship are posting videos panicking. They're isolated. This virus causes hemorrhagic fever. I guess it makes your internal organs bleed, and then your kidneys fail. And just in time for an election, pandemic fears for all those who are traumatized by COVID. I suppose a lot of people, this is one of the biggest trending stories of the day. I guess people are scared about the potential for human-to-human transmission in hantavirus. Normally, you get it by inhaling particles of rodent feces. Yeah, so don't live in a rodent-infested place.
No word on whether they flew to their cruise on Spirit Airlines. We don't,
None?
we don't have that
I
yet.
don't know yet.
Yeah, it's gone. It's gone.
Is it officially closed, Spirit, the door?
Yeah. Apparently, like it shuttered like recently, right?
They're done, yeah, just the last day or two.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever been on a cruise before?
No.
I have been on a
I've been on a
cruise.
lot.
I have
going to
been
go.
to the Bahamas.
I have not.
Now, this is a long cruise that was going like from South America up and around to like Spain or something.
They were hitting all the South Atlantic islands, so Ascension Island, St. Helena.
Did they have rats on board?
So the cruise ship company is saying no. The cruise ship, but you got to think here. Okay, well, who in this whole story be incentivized to deny that there's rats on their ship? It's going to be the cruise ship company. That being said, what's likely that's happening here? So the WHO lady came out and she said, well, there's no rats on board. So she's sort of putting the WHO's stake on the fact that there's going to be no rats on board. What's still likely is one of two things, which is one, the hantavirus actually, they call this the Andes strain. So the Andes strain, and this is not my purview. This is just my understanding of the situation. I was listening to like a Stanford, disease virus expert talk about this. And the Andes strain is the only known strain of hantavirus that can be transmitted from human to human. That being said, the only way for it to actually spread is by like close quarters with other human beings that are infected for an extended period of time. So a cruise ship, in theory, would become a petri dish for this sort of thing. But it's unlikely that it could spread just in passing like, COVID in theory did. And so all that to be said, the Andes strain, as you can tell by the name, is found in South America. And so this is where they suspect that patient 0 contracted a hantavirus. Was, again, in port. The boat left from Ushuaia, Argentina, which is at the very southern tip of Argentina. And it's actually, there's cases that get reported quite often. I mean, not like at high volume, but often enough that it's noted that, okay, there's a specific strain that exists in South America, and it's the only strain of hantavirus that can be transmitted human to human. Very unlikely for that to happen, but again, a cruise ship is a likely petri dish for that to occur. So it's very unfortunate. It's very tragic. But the Stanford and a lot of other people, again, that are experts in this field have come out and said they're not terribly worried about this sort of spreading in mass. Again,
kind of what I heard.
It's just routine quarantine. Again, like people act like the first time people ever got quarantined was COVID. People get quarantined for stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. In this instance, they're doing contact tracing. They're going to hopefully quarantine the right people. And again, even if it became a thing, it would happen in Argentina most likely because that seems to be where they picked it up at. They would be able to just, again, quarantine chunks of the population and it shouldn't spread globally. Like the indication that this could turn into a pandemic seems to be like low likelihood. One wrench in everything is there was, I believe it was the captain of the ship, the ship's doctor, did speculate that the virus is behaving in a way that wouldn't be typical with a hantavirus. Now, that could just be because he's in fight or flight mode right now. He actually just contracted it, according to some latest reports.
Really?
Yeah. But it makes sense. He's a doctor. Like,
what should we scuttle the ship and then just set it ablaze?
Well, so some people have proposed that Trump takes the Venezuela approach here and just double taps the ship. So I've heard that posture. Currently, the plan is we're going to dock it in the Canary Islands and then do some like routine desanitization. But that's an option that we could just kill everyone on board.
Did you see the video where the guy's crying, being like, "We're not just a story, we are people, and we are scared," or whatever?
Theater kid on board,
right? Like, I'm trying not to be mean because I'm like, I get it, it's scary. But the dude is crying and saying nothing. He's like, we're on a boat, and it's not just a story. I'm like, yeah, we know that.
Batman couldn't get that video out of me. That's crazy. That is. He can't keep frame whatsoever. It's like, dude, I get it's scary, but like you got to dial in a little bit here. Like everyone's gonna see this. You're the first guy to put a video out. It's gonna go everywhere. Like keep frame, keep composure, don't freak out, because now everyone thinks you're just like a theater kid, as I just speculated.
We really don't want you back
That's
on
the worst
land
thing
now.
that could ever happen to you is to be labeled a theater kid.
I was a theater kid.
Yeah,
I just don't want to get ahead of it.
You don't want to identify as a
Yeah,
theater
and I'll never have
I
to
did
again.
some theater in my day.
Oh, like, I did theater for a week and I was kicked out.
Really? That sucked. You'd be good at it.
Yeah.
Man, my theater nerd friends didn't like cinema, so I stopped watching movies for like 6 years.
Oh, really?
That was weird.
That's hardcore.
It was like a cult. Not really, but they were like, we don't watch movies.
Was it like a Scorsese thing where he's like, all the movies now are just trash?
He didn't like any movies. He was like, we're not into this cinema. I was like, well, they're all
took their
cool.
jobs. That's like AI kind of precursor.
So we just read scripts and did
We
live
believe in
action.
nothing.
Yeah. But yeah, this is worth keeping an eye on. I mean, look, obviously the appetite for a global pandemic is there. I mean, because for one, it would dethrone a lot of political regimes around the world that are unpopular right now, but also because the media is prime for it. The media is prime. We've had like 6 or 7. I keep an eye on this kind of stuff. We've had like 6 or 7 pieces coming out of major publications. Like, oh my gosh, is this the next pandemic? What's going on? Now this one, you're seeing people die. That's why it's very tragic. And I think this is what you can ultimately chalk this up to, is just a very tragic situation. It's terrible. These people were on the trip of a lifetime, right? They were getting to visit the South Atlantic. I believe they're scheduled to visit
That's
Antarctica.
a small cruise, bro.
It's an Antarctic cruise. It's not like it's not like a Disney cruise or whatever.
Carnival
This is a small. These are people that have probably saved up a lot of money to take this trip of a lifetime, and now there's a couple that's died. Unfortunately, there's a gentleman from Germany. It was a Dutch couple. There's a man from Germany. He's
Were they
fighting for his
old?
life in Johannesburg. I don't believe so. I think
somebody
they're in their 50s or
wasn't someone like 80s or something.
That's old,
70s?
bro.
Well, I mean, I can't.
I think
confirm
there
Like
was
that 50s and 60s would be risk factor for a virus like this.
sure
Comorbidities,
but it has a 30 to 40% fatality rate regardless, like irrespective of age, because your lungs fill up with fluid. It doesn't matter how old you are, you're going to die from that.
Yeah,
so.
respiratory problems.
And the people on this cruise are going to primarily be old because, again, this is kind of a retirement thing to do. But it's very sad. I find it very sad because these people, like, you dream of a trip like that just for it to devolve in a tragedy. Like,
I will say the Viking cruise is down the Danube. Like that's the one cruise to me that's like a small boat. I'm looking at that. I'm like, I could do that in my
Is that a real
golden years.
Do they give those cruises?
Yeah, they're like
yeah,
it's
they're
a
awesome.
small boat, and it's like I think it's Viking. Isn't that the company?
Shout out to Lothgar. Wasn't that the?
And they go down the Danube, and it's a small boat, and the guy.
that'd be a blast.
You get to raid Paris.
I mean, cruise ships are nuts. Like the one I went on, I don't even know, like what, like 30 decks or like 30 stories.
thousands of people on.
I know.
It's insane.
I've probably been on like 7 or 8 because I had a family member that worked for a cruise company, so it was just like a fun thing to do in the summer. And
Good robust immune system.
yeah, well, it's funny because these cruise ships, these cruises were like primarily for like evangelicals, and so they would shut down the casino, they would shut down the bars. So it was like everyone's stone. It's the opposite of what you would expect on a cruise. It's like everyone's stone cold sober. No one's like trying to kill themselves because they got wiped out at the casino. Like it's a really actually quite enjoyable thing. But I did go on one cruise, and it was the Duck Dynasty. I don't remember Duck Dynasty. Remember that show?
Yeah.
It was the Duck Dynasty cruise, and I was privy to sort of the security detail on the cruise ship, and they noted that they've had to stop at least like a couple hundred passengers because they're trying to bring rifles onto the boat because they want to hunt ducks while they're on the boat. I thought that was really interesting, is that it just never occurred to them that you can't bring like firearms into international waters like that on a cruise ship. But that just shows you the Duck Dynasty cruise that I was on might have been the highest concentration of patriots I think I've ever seen in my entire life.
Dude, when you were talking about
Amazing.
the media like catching onto the fear of pandemicy, like that's when you were saying,
Pandemicy?
yeah, I like making word. I love
good
that's the
word.
good thing about English is you can make
Pandemicy.
words with suffixes.
Neologism.
Oh yeah.
You were when you said the doctor said this time this virus seems to be acting a little different. I could feel like the hair stand up on other people's
Yeah,
arms that are
it's
listening to
scary.
the show.
We all remember COVID. It's scary.
It's the rat piss virus.
It shouldn't be that scary, but it is because people are like tweaked out from like those crazy movies, The Stand,
Yeah,
COVID, of course.
it over
and
the
if there's
phone
one,
intercom.
and if there's one agency, one group of people right now that would be incentivized to like sound the alarm bell right now, it would be the WHO. I mean, the WHO, their funding's been threatened by the United States. A couple other countries are like
Yeah, they're on the ropes.
they're on the ropes. And so if there's one organization that would have, sort of the impetus to like really ham this up and make it into a thing, it would be the WHO. And the lady literally,
You need us.
yeah, exactly. And she just came out and just like doused the flames. She was just like, look, we're going to get this mopped up. Don't worry about it. We're collaborating with the Spanish.
Yeah.
Or it's like that, Battle of Wits with Vizzini. And, did I put the poison glass in front of me or did I put it
that's
for myself? Because a clever man would assume that the World Health Organization was trying to trick us.
Yeah.
So she would certainly pretend that she wasn't. So they would think so that we wouldn't realize she was.
That's
Sandwich,
true.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That is epic.
Well, and what's interesting is, some people are speculating actually because the WHO has lost so much funding over the last few years that what could be happening, this is all purely speculation, what could be happening is that a primary source of their income right now is coming from the private sector. It's shipping magnates, etc. So what could be happening right now is the WHO is getting weighed on heavy by these shipping magnates saying, look, these guys are going to be on our tails about rat droppings, rat feces, because the story that everyone has kind of accepted right now is that the boat was contaminated by rat droppings, et cetera, et cetera. It's more likely to happen in Argentina. That being said, the entire shipping industry is like, hey, we're already on the ropes and, in the Strait of Hormuz, like we don't need another situation where we got to waste time like sanitizing our ships and everything. And that's just a theory. I think what's more likely is the WHO is just being a little bit honest.
That's a good piece of journalism, dude. Did you uncover that? Did you put that together yourself? That the private sector is funding?
Yeah,
the
well,
WHO,
yeah,
the
it's like-
shipping that's great.
Yeah, you lose funding. They got to get the funding from somewhere.
It makes me think it's definitely not a concern. Firstly, with the WHO stamped down, and also if you were going to try and spread a global pandemic, or if there were that thing, you wouldn't have a 40 to 50% fatality rate. You'd have it be like 0.0000. You want it to be highly infective, but not
Yeah,
lethal. So that
and the strain has been known.
I played the what's that game that you play as a virus and you're trying to spread yourself?
Plague Inc.
Yeah, I've played Plague Inc. I know.
Yeah, go to Greenland. That's the safest place. Yeah, it's
Well, it's
impossible to get there.
hard to get in at first.
Yeah.
So you got to make sure you infect them, because if you don't and they shuttle the borders down, you'll never get them. And there's like 12 people there.
Yeah, you're cooked. If that
How do you
happens.
play that?
And the
Like
It's like
Inc?
an old game.
Yeah.
it's an old mobile
Check it
game.
out. And they uploaded after COVID it landed. They were like, and they made an expansion called The Cure.
Yeah.
They felt really bad about it.
that'd be like, and then the world just gets repopulated by Eskimos. That'd be kind of nice.
So you were saying something awesome when I started talking about Plague Inc.
No, No, I was saying that the Hansa virus, specifically the Andes strain, has been known since the 1990s. So, the COVID-19, it has 19 in the name. It was a newfangled thing. They didn't. The story is that they didn't quite know how to react to it. Therefore, it was kind of by the seat of her pants or whatever. This one, I from what I understand, again, this is not like my realm, but from what I understand is they are pretty familiar with it. Like authorities all across South America have been dealing with this for a long time. Unfortunately, it has like a 40% fatality rate. So if you do catch it, at the very least, you're going to get banged up. But as far as its potential to be like a global pandemic seems pretty low. What you would do if you are in the audience, not financial advice, but if you are in the audience and you are speculating that this will turn into a global pandemic, if we saw from the last virus, COVID-19, what people did was they bought dips, right? They bought stock options indicating that the price would go low, right? They bought calls.
They bought big pharma.
Yeah. They didn't buy calls. They bought puts. And because they thought the stock market would tank. But when Trump and Jay Powell see eye to eye, they crank the money printer on. If there's any volatility in the market caused by the global pandemic, for example, the stock market was hitting like all-time highs like a month in. So
Money printer go burr.
Money printer go burr. Now, Jay Powell's out of a job now, so he might have taken the money printer with him on his way out. But I think it's probably bolted down in the Federal Reserve somewhere.
Who's the new guy? Who's the new Fed chair?
They haven't picked yet. There's a few names being speculated, but
Trump's just like, print more money,
Yeah, like
lower interest rates.
Can you guys, any of you guys do the math and calculate when it would burst if they keep doing that?
what, like inflation?
Oh boy.
Well, it's a big debate. I mean, some people think, the United States government will be insolvent in 10 years. And then some people say it actually doesn't matter because we hold the global reserve currency, so we can literally do whatever we want. Those are like the two kind of schools of thought.
Like Warsh is the new guy they're trying to get in. They haven't voted on Warsh yet?
No, as it stands, Jay Powell's still the the chair, but he's going to be on the board still. He's still going to be around.
Well, I wouldn't think of myself as a simp for Elon because I'll criticize him to his face whenever, but like he has been talking a lot about post-money society, and with the economy going this direction, that would make sense. Like now is the time if we could ever as a human, because what they used to do was currency resets and destroy the value of the money.
Right.
Back in like ancient Greece, I think they had a currency reset, and you want to maybe not obliterate but that's like the worst. Last resort.
It's hard not to see the direction of the economy. Gas, no jobs. Like they're still flooding the H-1B scam is still flooding our shores with extra workers. And American kids that are finishing college are not finding jobs. They're being replaced because the folks who come here, their educations are subsidized, so they'll take jobs for less cash. It's hard to see all this, and not lend at least or begin to think that there's some credence to what Elon's talking about with where they're going with, like, is this Agenda 2030 a real thing, or the UBI, or, with Chang, Chang was talking about normalizing the UBI talk. Now they're talking about getting rid of taxes. They're talking about entirely, to the money printer point, if we're just printing all this money, why is anybody paying any taxes, right? I mean, these are legitimate arguments that, like,
They're trying to go techno-commie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a pretty popular school of thought, actually, certainly within Congress, is that, again, as long as we're the international currency reserve, you actually can kind of do whatever you want. Now, the credit ratings are dropping for the United States. We did bump it back up in the Trump presidency, so that does have some implications. But for the most part, as far as money printing goes, that's one school of thought. Do I think that's the case? Potentially, it depends on how this whole BRICS shakeup works out. So far, we have had a little trouble with Iran, China, Russia. Those are the other players involved. Again, if BRICS is able to sort of mount a charge, but we saw in negotiations with Russia that the SWIFT, I think it was. I think Bessent was talking about it, was that Russia actually is using the SWIFT banking system as like the United States is using the SWIFT banking system as a bargaining chip with Russia, which indicates that Russia is like, tap out, we want back in. So that's why it's kind of a hit against a lot of these people that are speculating that BRICS is like ascendant and that sort of thing, is the fact that Russia is actually keen on sort of rejoining the global banking system, which is dependent on SWIFT.
That's really good. I mean, relative to what could happen if there was a breakdown. That's good. But what do you think that's because of the Iranian position and taking of one is Venezuela?
Well, the BRICS nations have gotten kicked in the teeth quite a few times over the last few years. And so the theory, 5-6 years ago, the multipolar theory was kind of the accepted, direction that the world was going, where after Venezuela, everyone kind of realized, like, actually, America's a lot more formidable than we thought, and our global adversaries are a lot weaker than we thought. Now, Iran is still a question mark. It depends on how this situation resolves. That will indicate if it's truly if the multipolar theory idea still has any credence. But my personal position is that I actually do think our adversaries are a bit weaker than we thought. I mean, Russia has been completely grinded down in Ukraine. China, they don't have any military experience for the most. They haven't been in a hot war in a very long time, certainly not under the new regime. So Taiwan, I think they're running calculus. They'll put out these war games that we took Taiwan quite decisively. This is why some people have said the Iran war might be a mistake, is because Taiwan, for example, 50% of their energy grid is LNG. So 50% of Taiwan's energy comes from LNG. Now LNG prices are going through the roof at a critical moment that Taiwan and our other Eastern Asian allies would need an overabundance of fuel. They need fuel costs to be really low. And so that is one, position people have said that actually the Iran war might have crippled their East Asian allies, because now they're having to buy fuel from the United States. In Taiwan's case, they're buying it from Australia. And they used to get it on sale from from Qatar. Now that's not the case. Now, if Qatar can rebuild their LNG fields, leave OPEC, it's going to be a garage sale.
We are OPEC now. Are we not OPEC? We are functionally OPEC.
Now we are. But where are the climate activists cheering on Trump right now? I mean, it's not a joke. Trump's causing fuel shortages around the world. China's been cut off from half of their production. A fifth of the world's supply is shut down. Greta Thunberg should be celebrating. This is the first time a world leader has been like, we're disrupting oil trade. Nope. She's mad about it, and she wants oil to Cuba. These people are full of it. It's all fake.
Yeah. Hopefully a good climate activist would, instead of saying stop using oil, would say start using new solution. And that would be the activism.
So the problem is that global coal usage is at all-time highs. So right. China, India, Southeast Asia, they're using global coal, the coal supply. It's the most expensive it's ever been, actually.
So do we believe Scott Bessent is going to sort of change his stripes, and then he's not going to maybe set us up for a big short like he did, with the UK, with the pound? There's another South Carolinian who is actually openly a homosexual. He's married. He's married to a man.
Yeah, you kind of need I love the idea that there's this catty gay guy that lives in a pink house just beating up people in the West Wing. That's actually pretty funny. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
What happened with Bessent in the pound? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So I mean, this is Soros's former chief financial officer back in the day, and he is famous for charting the course for where Soros was able to sort of really make his first big bones, where they essentially shorted the pound in the 90s, 92, 3, 4. Check me on the year.
Okay.
And this is basically what made Soros into this sort of global.
What?
Yep. So Bessent is very closely tied to Soros, and that's been their. It's not just a one-off. They've done that a couple of times where they've run up this thing and then had a big short and then made a ton of money later.
I heard there was I don't know, but $100 million of insider trading, and that was 4 weeks ago. I heard in the Trump admin. Yeah, George Soros shorted the British pound aggressively on September 15, 16 of 92.
Yeah, it was called Black Wednesday. There was this thing that happened. It's really complicated. The UK kept pound storage in the European exchange, and I think the story is supply ran low in Britain, and then a lot of institutional traders caught wind of this and shorted the pound into the ground. So then when the sell-off started, they were just cashing out all their puts, and they made a bunch of money. And the British government, it was actually a serious crisis. And that's part of the reason that, we started to see the emergence of third rail politics, right? So Britain, Tony Blair, for example, kind of emerged out of this because the British economy was in such a bad state. And then the United States, Bill Clinton obviously would classify as kind of this third rail politics, which is just liberalism with a fresh coat of paint. But
so is that when they transitioned to the euro?
It was basically it was happening it was pretext, I believe, to do that because that happened in the late 90s.
Can we expect a big short on the U.S. dollar coming up when we transition to the USDC?
That's my question. It's what are we looking at here? Is there going to be a big sort of engineered, sell-off and just how much? What's going to happen with all of our debt? Is China and Japan going to get rid of all of our debt? And there's a bunch of folks that have our cojones, by the short ones here.
Did other people short the pound when Soros went in?
Yeah, that was the whole scandal, was that there was a lot of institutional traders that like basically shook the treasury out. Now, the UK they've never moved to the euro, but what was interesting was the decision to withdraw all the British pounds from the European exchange. Again, I don't know what the official name is for it. The three ministers that were basically that were making that decision were all like Eurocrats. They were like very pro-European. We should be tighter. We should be more intertwined with the European Union.
Yep.
And they were the ones that actually decided that we should just execute the withdrawal now, rip the Band-Aid, and then whatever happens. Because I think at the back of their head, they thought it would force the UK to like fully integrate into the EU and then adopt the euro. Now it didn't happen. And then obviously 2015, 2016 Brexit happened.
But Europe did, though. I mean, Europe went. I mean, Europe toppled quick, like, thereafter.
Yeah.
We're going to go to the Rumble rants and Super Chats, so smash the like button. Share the show with everyone you've ever met in your life. The uncensored portion of the show will be up at rumble.com/Timcast IRL at 10 p.m. If you're a member of the Timcast.com Discord, you can actually call in to the show and talk to us and the guest. So do that. All right. Evan for US says, is everything to do with SCOTUS ruling and the DOJ having to do with gerrymandering, possibly part of Trump's planned golden age of America with a possible permanent Republican majority? Well, we don't need to call it anything. This is obviously a plan. Everyone thinks so. Republicans and Democrats both agree this was planned. These Republican states already had plans in advance for this ruling to come down from the Supreme Court. It may not be the Supreme Court was involved in it. It could just be that Republicans knew the Supreme Court was going to go this way, so they planned for it. I think they've been planning this for over a year or longer, and they expected this all to happen. I don't know about any grand scheme called, the golden age of Trump or whatever, but I think they knew this was coming.
Yeah, well, it was James Blair. This was actually, I think it was in the Times, maybe they reported on this, was James Blair, before the inauguration, went to Trump with this plan like, hey, look, the House majority going into the midterms is going to be razor thin. This is the reality of the situation. So in order to bolster the Republican seats in the House, James Blair put together this entire strategy and he presented it to Trump, and Trump was like, yeah, this passes the sniff test, let's do it. That's why Texas was the shot across the bow, right? When Texas decided to pursue redistricting. I think this is why I give credence to the idea that maybe it was planned, because James Blair's not an idiot. A lot of people have criticisms of him or whatever, but he's not an idiot. He knew that the Democrats would come back harder, quite frankly, than the Republicans would go. So I do think there was some game theory going on, as he knew, he ran the numbers. He said, even if the Republicans like half bake this, they're still going to end up with more seats. That's what looks like it's going to happen.
I've got this might be unpopular, but I've got a little bit of a dire prediction for how this redistricting stuff goes. And I can give you a couple of different examples. But what happens when you take, for example, the James Clyburn district, which is kind of in the middle of South Carolina, and you divide that out and you put some of it into the first district, which is the Nancy Mace district, and then a couple of others, instead of having one Democrat district in South Carolina, you end up with two, definitely, I believe, and maybe three Democrat districts in South Carolina out of 7. We've seen this in North Carolina as well. They've gone back and forth. North Carolina is famously sort of one of those states that's been sort of like under the microscope of the DOJ after the CRA for, the 50, 60 years or whatever. And the courts are always saying go back and forth. And we've massively had huge pendulum swings and vicissitudes with, in North Carolina, there's 14 seats. We were up at like 11-3 at one point. And then in a matter of like 2 years, we went to like 7-6. I mean, this stuff happens when you start messing with these districts. Look, I'm not saying, let's keep the James Clyburn, district, but there's something to be said, I believe, for this Fourth Amendment idea that you have the right to associate and dissociate, and it's a kind of a state's issue and a local issue rather than a federal issue. In general, I tend to think, hey, leave it to the states, let them work it out, get the DOJ out of it. I think this is the opportunity maybe to finally go that direction.
I'm starting to think it's a bad idea. What the Supreme Court did was a bad ruling because, they can just say, hey, it was never about racism anyway. It was always about their political affiliate. It was always about their because there's correlations.
You think that it would be good to allow race-based congressional districts?
No, but the argument's so easily made that it wasn't race-based all along, or
that has nothing to do with the question of should people be allowed to do it. All the Supreme Court said was you can't. Okay, now they can lie. Okay, sure.
And it doesn't change anything though.
You do understand that if you own you do understand that the law bans people from kicking a person out of their restaurant for being black. So all you have to do is say, we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. Get out of my store. They can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Exactly. It basically, they didn't really change anything with the ruling, which is why I think it's a bad ruling.
That's why I always say it's culture that's going to change things, not law. Let's grab some more. We got Sharp says, how at this point, this far into her tenure as a member of SCOTUS, does KBJ not have competent lawyers advising her on how to do her job because she's an activist who got the position who doesn't care about what her lawyers think?
Is that how it works? Supreme Court justices have like a group of advisor lawyers?
Yeah, they have clerks, and they're
staff.
High churn as well, high turnover for clerks. But a lot of senators, even Supreme Court justices, clerked for Supreme Court justices.
It's a political climbing gig.
It's a family, and we're not in it.
They get churned out because they're bad, or they get churned out because they don't agree with the judge?
No, it's just churned because it's like temporary positions.
They're climbers.
Yeah, as soon as they get the next option, they take it. So. But it's a valuable part of sort of the law process.
I'd do it. I don't know how good I'd be, but I'd love to do it.
As far as I understand, once it's on your resume, and you can do whatever you want.
Yep.
Cool.
So, pro tip to any Ivy League lawyers watching this show, I guess, if it hasn't occurred to
Laura,
you, maybe you should clerk for a Supreme Court justice.
Laura says, what the heck is over Tate's shoulder on the desk? A rock? A quarter-pound vacuum sealed?
Oh.
Is that pyrite?
I think so. I'm going to go touch it.
Yeah, go touch
Fool's gold?
I'm going to get my fingers on that. You might be talking about this. Beautiful. I believe it is pyrite.
Is it heavy?
Yeah. Probably about 15 pounds.
Oh, wow.
We should bring in, I have like a $2,000 amethyst geode.
Yeah.
I don't know where that's at.
I want to bring a big crystal ball back in here, too.
You want to bring a big crystal ball in?
It's a gigantic crystal ball.
I think I know where it
You
is.
could get a resident soothsayer for Mondays or something. Candace Owens, maybe. I think she could be.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Surprise, surprise. Everybody was reporting that Daily Wire laid off half their staff because, guys, I know it's not most people who watch this show, but of course they were all lying. This crowd of people, that's what they do. So I don't know. Do you know the exact number of people that got laid off from the Daily Wire?
I don't.
I've heard it was in the dozens, the low dozens. And I guess they put out a statement. I don't know exactly what it was, but they were nowhere near that many people got laid off at all. Actually, they're hiring. They're hiring still.
Yeah, as I understand, most of the layoffs, and I mean, I'm not running cover for the Daily Wire here. I'm just trying to be neutral here. From what I understand, is they laid off mostly staffing and auxiliary projects, right? So projects that aren't essential to the Daily Wire brand. So we do know they lost their tail on their movies and stuff like that. So I from what I've read, that's where most of the layoffs are occurring because they're trying to restructure and say, let's just get back to the core product that works.
But the thing is that I think this has a lot to do with Jeremy Boring being ousted. Essentially, they dumped a lot of money into Pendragon Cycle, which wasn't going to fit that their market share. Their audience. What is a Woman and Am I Racist were perfect for their audience, and they took a tremendous risk on trying to be a studio, but they made the I'm sorry, an obvious mistake. We got a little Daily Wire thing on the table. You don't build the foundation before the business. Everybody knows this. You start a product, see if it works, and iterate. That is, if you want to open a burger restaurant, you're better off opening a burger stand or a food truck to see if you can sell and make enough money before you try brick and mortar. You can put the truck in various locations to see where it does better. Everybody, I've known this since I was a teenager, talking with entrepreneurs. They always say, don't buy a building to start a business. Figure out the business first, then figure out where location is going to be. And so in this instance, they said, hey, we're doing politics. We're making hundreds of millions of dollars. Let's spend that hundreds of millions of dollars on a fantasy book series adaptation. It's that's like building a skyscraper hotel before having any kind of experience building hotels. No disrespect. I'm glad they were trying, but maybe they would have been better off doing 300 small, low budget projects instead of one gigantic. Because even just think about the business there. Everybody signs up to Daily Wire Plus to watch Pendragon Cycles, right? Pendragon Cycle. Let's say you sign up 1 million people. Then what? You're making money for sure, but what's your next product? Because you put everything into one production with an insane amount of money. Now, I get it. Jeremy Boring always wanted to do this. But what if you said, how about instead of spending millions per episode, we just do 4 movies instead of 1 episode? Then we can spread it all out and create a release schedule so we constantly have new movies being released that are lower budget. And there's so many movies you could do, comedies even, that could have made it work.
If they had the manpower and the creativity, yes, because the problem I had with their business model using it, I subscribed to Daily Wire Plus to watch What is a Woman, and then as soon as I finished the movie, I unsubscribed because I didn't know what was going to happen next month. There was no schedule, no plan.
Well, the issue is that when you subscribe to the Daily Wire, it's because you like Matt Walsh or Ben Shapiro or Michael Knowles. So I'm not going to log into my Daily Wire app to be like, I'm going to watch Michael Knowles and then I'm going to watch an action film.
Someone, a critic online said that their criticism of Jeremy's handling of the business was that he had said he wanted to make art that parents could tolerate because parents weren't, they were losing their minds and he wanted to help. So he was making art for the parents, but not for the kids. Like they weren't making movies that kids love. They were making movies that parents can tolerate. And so it's supposed to be the kid tells the parent, hey, I want that. And the parent goes and buys it. But they missed that. This is what
the other thing I got to say about Bentkey is that I really appreciate the effort. But any investor right now would ask, what's your market for Bentkey? Parents. How many people are parents? Barely any people right now. Mm-hmm. People are in their 30s with no kids. Fertility is less than 2. So I appreciate the mission and the fight he was doing, but I think they're putting the cart before the horse. You need to invest in the culture, which they're doing. I don't know if there's a big enough market share for that kind of content that you're really going to get it.
Yeah, if it's true, it's tough.
To be fair, no, that's stupid. I mean, what do you really need? 10,000 parents to subscribe? But you can find them. You know, you can make it work. I just think that in the end, I think Pendragon probably was too much for him. And so the layoffs that are largely happening is it's movie division stuff. Guys, it doesn't cost any money for Ben Shapiro to sit in front of a camera and complain. We do the same thing. It's like this show is expensive because we've built a show out with guests and with a lot of stuff and a lot of people. But like the monologuing thing like Matt Walsh, I do, Ben Shapiro does, it costs nothing. It costs the internet. You pay $20 a month in a major urban metro and you get gigabit, you get fiber, and then you buy a nice camera. Maybe your total investment by the time you're at this level is going to be a few $1,000s to get a good microphone and camera. You know. Yeah. Anyway, let's grab some more super chats over here on that there YouTube. We got those Rumble rants in already. Let's see. What does it say? Mapeloco. Mapeloco. Justice Alito decision is based as hell. LOL. Agreed? I like that guy. Let's see. Tom Forsyth says, in honor of Marx's birthday, I am buying everyone nothing for dinner. How's it going?
Today? Happy birthday, Carl.
Is it Marx's birthday?
No.
Of course, everybody knows today is Cinco de Mayo, which, if you're not familiar with why we celebrate, it's actually a commemoration. In 1835, a trade vessel from Spain was delivering a large shipment of mayonnaise to the Spanish colonies when it sank after striking a reef. And, of course, it all sank. And it was very sad because many people lost their lives. So we commemorate the Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, that makes
Hellmann's and Dukes, they just went under.
Story.
They went under.
Indeed. Yep.
I blame capital.
Actually, most people don't know this, but it was actually called Dukeman's. And after that catastrophe, the Dukeman brothers split up and created 2 companies, Dukes and Hellmann's, and they've been in a bitter rivalry ever since. Their kids hate each other.
Was it?
All of that, of course, is made up.
I
Never
thought it
happened.
was the helmsman of the ship decided to go down with the ship, and they named the Mayo after him.
Indeed, Duke.
Maybe I was.
Actually, it's the victory of the Battle of Puebla.
This is dad jokes.
I don't know. I want to say this again. For the life of me, do not understand celebrating Cinco de Mayo because they won the Battle of Puebla.
Well, they would have been colonized by France if they won that battle.
And then they beaten snails.
Yeah.
Imagine celebrating 200 years later because you're not French.
I know. Well, and what's so crazy is, and this is like a bit of hidden American history, is so the Battle of Puebla was like 1863 or something like that. Anyway, the Mexicans repel the French, et cetera, et cetera. What was interesting is that after the American Civil War, the Americans backed the Mexican liberal. There was 2 factions. There was the liberals and the conservatives. And the Americans actually backed the Mexican liberals against the coalition of the Mexican conservatives and the French. I think that was a miscalculation, if I have to be completely honest here. I think I would have preferred a sort of French-Mexican hybrid population south of the border. That'd be pretty cool.
Mexican.
Be pretty cool.
Claris says, something to consider with prediction market thing is it's the new fad. Now every layman, midwit, and nitwit is on it. The wisdom of the crowd doesn't mean much if the majority is first-order thinkers betting on what they want to happen. That is correct. One of my favorite things about Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is that if you did not use Ask the Audience in the first 4 questions, it was useless. Because when they'd get to the point and be like, what was the name of the scientist in 1876 who won the Nobel Prize for his discovery in mathematics? And you'd be like, I'm going to ask the audience. And then it's just equally every letter because nobody knows. So you can only really ask them obvious questions that everyone should know that you don't. I do like that one clip where Norm Macdonald was like, I forgot, he's like this, it's like between A and B, and I think I could use a 50-50, but you're not going to, there's not a guy back there who's going to make it. The only 2 left are A and B is there. And he's like, no, it's all predetermined. He goes, all right, I'll use 50-50. And then it eliminates C and D and makes A and B. And he goes, looks at him. It's so good. It's like, there's not a guy back there who's going to do that, right? And then he did. All right, let's grab a couple more. Garhant says, can we talk about Miss Graham's extensive butterfly collection and the young gentleman?
Oh, Lord have mercy.
She spreads them to, wait.
Wait, what?
Is that true?
Okay, so butterfly or ladybug? I think we're talking about ladybugs.
Ladybugs?
Lady
Lindsey
G.
Graham has a ladybug.
So we can't talk about it on YouTube, but
Oh, okay, well, we'll
save this.
uncensored.
I know what it is.
Uncensored portion coming up in 2 minutes, where we will learn the secrets.
Google. Let's lady.
Well, we'll save it for the uncensored portion. We'll save it. All right, let's see what we got here. Emily Payne says, "Hear me out. What if Hillary comes out as one of the lizard people?"
Be interesting.
Finally.
The information they release is literally just Hillary standing at the podium, and she
comes
goes,
out?
"I'd like you all to see this," and then her mouth just opens and folds backwards, and a lizard
I
head
might
comes out.
believe that.
Probably save her public image.
Actually, it would be really fun. It would be really funny if it's not a lizard person, but like her mouth opens and a literal just like 3-foot long iguana comes out. Her fake bodysuit flops to the ground and literally just runs away.
Hill dog, you never looked
She's gone, and we're like, okay, I don't know what that was about.
There with the cat.
Hill
She's just
dog,
been a
I've
lizard
never
the whole
been more
time.
She's a
attracted
flea
to you in my
stack.
life.
She's a
She
flea
goes like
stack.
this, and then she pulls a
stack,
zipper down her face, and it's just a lizard, like an iguana standing there, not saying anything.
Would have been a good costume for the Met Gala last night.
Hillary, you've never looked sweeter. I might actually have sex with you now.
Wow, are you from Arkansas? That's amazing.
All right, everybody, we're going to get ready for that uncensored portion of the show. So smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know, of course. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Good sir, would you like to shout anything out?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tim. Mark Lynch for Senate. Everybody go to lynchforsenate.com. Also, if you want to read all about Lindsey's sins, you got to go to dumplindsey.co. That's dumplindsey.co. You can read about his numerous sins, and also check out the National File at National File on Twitter.
I'm at Ian Crossland. Find me on the internet at Ian Crossland. X, YouTube, Instagram. Follow me. Check out my Instagram clips. I've been putting up a lot of fresh new music. One song I wrote like 15 years ago. It's so depressing, but it was sitting in the shelf, so I picked it up and finished it. It's weird to sing old lyrics that hurt to say out loud when I don't still believe it. It was very weird. Check it out. Tate Brown.
Yeah, X and Instagram at Real Tate Brown. We'll be back here tomorrow for the Timcast News noon live show. It'll be on Rumble. And Godspeed, because Lindsey Graham, he's got to go. So,
Well, thank you, sir.
You can follow me at Carter Banks and at Carter Banks Music everywhere else. Follow our record label at Trash House Records on YouTube. And yeah, this is going to be a weird Lindsey Graham story in the after show, so let's get into it.
We'll see you all over at rumble.com/TimcastIRL right now. Thanks for hanging out.